Today's artificial intelligence is moving out of the research lab. Theoretical model training has converted directly into revenue-generating deployment on factory floors. Two major macroeconomic forces are driving this speed. First, domestic super apps process transactions for over 1 billion users, generating massive, highly structured data pools. Second, state infrastructure subsidies heavily discount the cost of computing power required to train new systems. A third force is accelerating the timeline even faster. Strict U.S. export controls on advanced semiconductors have placed a hard cap on imported computing power. To survive, Chinese developers have had to aggressively build sovereign domestic hardware. The ecosystem is splitting into two parts, the Titans and the Tigers. The Titans are incumbent tech conglomerates building the physical foundation and broad ecosystems. The Tigers are agile unicorns disrupting specific industry verticals. Tracking how these two groups divide the labor reveals who is building the underlying software that will drive future industrial production. We start with the base layer. Huawei provides the essential sovereign hardware backbone. They engineer the domestic alternative to Western silicon that keeps the entire ecosystem running. Their Ascend processors and dedicated cloud infrastructure provide the physical compute that makes the rest of China's AI development possible. On top of that hardware sits Alibaba. They dominate the open-source software layer. Their Qwen family of models is currently the most downloaded set of tools on Hugging Face, a global community platform for sharing open-source AI code. Alibaba has also reached a financial milestone. By applying these models across their e-commerce and logistics network, they have demonstrated that AI-driven recommendation engines can already offset their own development costs. Huawei supplies the physical hardware. Alibaba supplies the open-source architecture. Without these two base layers, the domestic development pipeline would stall. From there, the application titans take over. Tencent is embedding agentic AI, software that can execute multi-step actions autonomously, directly into WeChat, a closed ecosystem used by over 1 billion people daily. Baidu used its Ernie search models as a stepping stone into physical mobility. Ernie is a family of deep learning algorithms optimized for Chinese language processing. They are now rolling out commercial Apollo Go robotaxi fleets across major Chinese cities, putting their algorithms directly onto public roads. Then there is ByteDance. They use highly tuned recommendation algorithms to capture the consumer market with tools like Daobao, while simultaneously leveraging that user base to scale their enterprise cloud services. These conglomerates are weaving machine learning into chat interfaces, daily commutes, and consumer entertainment. While the Titans build broad infrastructure, a group of agile unicorns known as the Tigers are attacking specialized verticals. DeepSeek leads this group through extreme efficiency. Their R1 model achieves reasoning and coding performance that rivals top Western models while using only a fraction of the computational resources. This chart shows the steep, expensive compute curve of traditional Western models compared to the flattened cost curve of DeepSeek's R1. They accomplish this using a mixture of experts architecture, a technique that routes user queries only to relevant subnetworks. By combining this routing efficiency with an open weight strategy, making the model's core parameters free to download and modify, they ensure rapid global adoption. Zhipu AI approaches the market through academia. Spun out of Tsinghua University, they dominate the corporate sector by providing model-as-a-service platforms. This is a cloud-based approach where enterprises rent customized access to AI models rather than building their own infrastructure. These unicorns demonstrate how capital efficiency and academic rigor can compete directly with the high compute expenditure of Western tech giants. Moonshot AI focuses entirely on the consumer. Their Kimi chatbot captured millions of users by mastering long context processing, the ability to ingest and analyze hundreds of thousands of words in a single prompt. MiniWax competes globally as a creative studio. They focus on high-fidelity text-to-video generation and interactive digital avatars, pushing directly into international entertainment markets. SenseTime took their legacy expertise in computer vision, systems trained to interpret digital images, and integrated their visual tools directly into municipal smart city security grids. These tigers satisfy highly specialized domestic enterprise contracts, while simultaneously exporting consumer entertainment tools to a global audience. Bypassing hardware constraints requires extreme software efficiency and an aggressive open-source approach. That strategy has successfully captured the attention of developers worldwide. The true momentum of this ecosystem is its escape from the data center. Developers are merging these advanced algorithms directly with China's dominance in physical manufacturing. This physical AI is scaling through export. Connected electric vehicles are acting as rolling data sensors, pushing Chinese software standards into Southeast Asia and the Middle East. The Chinese AI race has moved from software benchmarks into global manufacturing pipelines. This division of labor between infrastructure titans and specialized tigers is establishing the technical standards that will govern how global industries automate. Physical battery production has rapidly become the definitive industrial bottleneck for the global transition away from fossil fuels. This chart shows total global electric vehicle battery demand, which surpassed 1,187 gigawatt-hours in 2025. A gigawatt-hour is enough energy to power roughly 10,000 vehicles. As you can see, Chinese companies control over 70% of this total global capacity. That 70% share is not a single monolith. The market is strictly divided between a dual oligopoly of two massive giants and a secondary tier known as the Challenger 8, a group of highly capable mid-tier specialists. This market structure abruptly forces global buyers to choose between the safety and reliability of massive manufacturing scale or the agility and customization of specialized technology. To map out exactly which supplier fits specific vehicle platforms or grid storage projects, we are going to count down the top 10 Chinese battery makers. Clearly understanding the distinct strategic identities of these 10 companies is now a critical requirement for any global OEM, or original equipment manufacturer, and utility provider aiming to survive the next decade. China achieved its pricing power by physically dividing its supply chain across two distinct geographic engines. The first engine is located inland, in resource-rich provinces like Qinghai and Sichuan. These unique areas host massive lithium brine lakes and spodumene mines, safely securing all the raw materials exactly at the source. By co-locating processing plants directly next to these brine lakes, battery companies gain a 20 to 25% logistics cost advantage compared to importing raw materials. The second engine sits on the coast. Provinces like Guangdong and Fujian operate as export hubs, specifically engineered to load finished battery cells onto ships bound for European and global markets. This aggressive dual-engine build-out carries financial risks. The massive scale introduces the threat of structural overcapacity, and stricter wastewater and solvent emission norms are rapidly raising the absolute compliance costs for all Tier 1 manufacturers. Still, this geography successfully concentrates the entire supply chain within China's borders. It forces global buyers to rely on a centralized ecosystem, setting the stage for the specific vendor trade-offs they must navigate. Opening our countdown at rank 10 and rank 9 are Energy and Zenergy. These companies operate as the Tier 2 agility players. Their strategy relies on offering highly flexible production capacity and aggressive pricing to win market share away from the top-tier giants. The trade-off here is risk. Sourcing from these smaller players carries a higher chance of supply instability if industry consolidation squeezes the market. At rank 8 is REPT Battery. They differentiate themselves through their proprietary wending battery technology and a unique resource-backed cost structure. REPT is backed by the Tsingshan Group, a massive nickel and stainless steel conglomerate. This vertical integration allows them to achieve extreme raw material stability and cost control. This diagram shows REPT's comprehensive environmental recycling loop. It operates as a strategic method for resource regeneration, taking end-of-life batteries through recycling and usage metallurgy directly back into recycled cathode materials for new manufacturing. Moving to rank 7, we find S-Volt Energy. S-Volt positions itself as a pioneer in next-generation semi-solid-state battery technology. Adopting S-Volt gives automakers early access to superior energy density. However, that advantage comes with higher upfront research and development costs and relies on a commercial scale that is still largely unproven. Ranks 10 through 7 represent the high-reward bets. They are ideal for buyers willing to take on supply risk in exchange for cutting-edge technological co-development. Entering at rank 6 is Sunwoda, a company that survives by mastering the fast-charging hybrid vehicle market.
Sunwoda's edge lies in ultra-fast charging technology and solid-state batteries. These are ideal for heavy-duty electric trucks and premium PHEVs, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, which combine a battery with a traditional internal combustion engine. To solidify a global supply chain outside of mainland China, they are actively expanding into Southeast Asia. This includes a massive multi-phase production plant in Thailand's Eastern Economic Corridor. At rank 5 is Eve Energy, the master of cylindrical cell formats for smart devices and the IoT, the Internet of Things, referring to interconnected sensors and appliances. Eve's highly standardized 21700 and 1865 cells make them the benchmark for power tools and smart meters. This focus allows them to largely bypass direct competition in the passenger EV market. Rank 4 belongs to Goshen High-Tech. They are a specialist in LFP, or lithium iron phosphate chemistries, and they are heavily integrated with Volkswagen's global manufacturing roadmap. Goshen provides an excellent cost-performance ratio for affordable electric vehicles. They back this up with a strong, expanding manufacturing footprint directly inside Europe. At rank 3 is Calbee, highlighting themselves as the one-stop high-power density mainstay for the commercial vehicle sector. Calbee's globally certified power solutions meet strict UN and IEC standards. This makes them the required backbone for electric buses and light commercial delivery fleets. Ranks 6 through 3 allow buyers to avoid the massive leverage of the big two, provided their platform needs align exactly with these specific technological niches. Now we transition to the peak of the market, the dual oligopoly that commands over 55% of all global battery installations. At rank 2 is BYD, whose battery division operates under the name FinDreams. They are the global titan of pure vertical integration. BYD's proprietary blade battery set the industry standard for thermal safety and space efficiency, packing more energy into a smaller physical footprint. But there is a structural trade-off for automakers. Sourcing from BYD means directly funding and relying upon your fiercest global vehicle competitor. Which brings us to rank 1, CATL. They are the undisputed benchmark, holding a massive 43% domestic market share in China. Signing a CATL agreement provides absolute bankability, massive production volume, and access to cutting-edge technology like sodium-ion cells or their Shenxing 4C super-fast charging batteries. The trade-off is leverage. Buyers have almost zero power in price negotiations, and relying on CATL creates high exposure to Western geopolitical blacklists and tariffs. Choosing the big two guarantees delivery, but it sacrifices supply chain leverage, turning the buyer into a small player in a massive, rigid pond. Stepping back, we can view this ecosystem not just as a list, but as a scale versus specialization matrix. This matrix plots the 10 companies based on 2 factors. The y-axis represents production volume, and the x-axis represents specialization, their willingness to co-develop custom technology. CATL and BYD sit firmly in the top left, while Eve, Sunwoda, and Esvolt cluster in the bottom right. This creates a clear decision tree. If you are a massive utility or a Tier 1 automaker needing bankable, de-risk volume at an immense scale, CATL and BYD are your only baseline. Alternatively, if you are developing premium performance vehicles or specialized smart devices, the Challenger 8 are where your competitive advantage is built. Selecting the right battery manufacturing partner represents the primary strategic choice that ultimately dictates a company's technological future. The global semiconductor market has surpassed $830 billion in annual revenue. These chips are the physical bedrock of the modern economy, dictating which nations control the future of artificial intelligence and industrial power. Western export controls and sanctions were implemented to cap China's technological rise. The strategy aimed to restrict access to the most advanced manufacturing tools and choke off the high-end chip supply. The outcome took a different path. Rather than collapsing, these restrictions triggered a massive, state-funded acceleration. This diagram illustrates how the standard global supply chain is splitting off into a secondary, isolated loop, a fully localized Chinese ecosystem. China is intentionally sacrificing peak global efficiency at the cutting edge. They are trading raw processing power for total sovereign resilience, ensuring their industrial base can operate without foreign dependencies. To see how they are doing this, we can examine the top companies driving this shift. Looking at this ranking of China's semiconductor ecosystem, we see a deliberately constructed parallel supply chain. This table of contents reveals how these companies organize into 4 functional pillars required for independence: foundry, equipment and packaging, memory, and design. The success of this ecosystem is not measured by beating NVIDIA's top AI performance. The goal is to insulate domestic tech manufacturing from foreign interference. To understand the future of global hardware, we have to evaluate exactly what these 10 companies are capable of producing today. The foundries form the physical bedrock of this new ecosystem. These are the factories that manufacture the actual chips. SMIC and Huahong are the 2 anchors here, ranking 1st and 5th by market cap. SMIC faces a strict input constraint. They lack access to advanced EUV, or extreme ultraviolet lithography, machines that use ultra-short light waves to print the smallest atomic-scale chip circuits. Because of this, they are forced to use older DUV, or deep ultraviolet lithography, combined with complex multi-patterning techniques. By making multiple passes over the silicon to etch the circuits, SMIC successfully produces 7-nanometer logic chips for companies like Huawei. They achieve the required density, but they sacrifice the high yields and low costs that global leaders like TSMC enjoy. Huahong uses a completely different strategy. They actively avoid the bleeding edge to focus entirely on mature nodes, manufacturing chips at 28 nanometers and above. They dominate in specialty power management semiconductors. These are the components essential for feeding China's massive electric vehicle and industrial IoT sectors. The foundation of China's strategy relies on securing the sheer volume of mature silicon required to run a modern industrial economy, rather than focusing exclusively on AI superchips. Foundries cannot operate without highly specialized tools. Naura Technology, the 3rd largest company on our list, provides the domestic answer to foreign equipment bans. Naura has rapidly climbed into the top 6 semiconductor equipment suppliers globally. They achieved this by aggressively replacing foreign etching and deposition tools inside Chinese fabrication plants. To bridge the remaining gap in lithography, China heavily utilizes advanced packaging, spearheaded by JCE Group. Advanced packaging is a method of connecting multiple separate chips into a single high-performance system. This 3D exploded view shows how JCE uses 2.5D and 3D packaging. They stitch together older, less advanced chips on a single silicon base, so they perform collectively like a larger, cutting-edge processor. By mastering back-end packaging and localizing factory tools, the Chinese ecosystem effectively mitigates its front-end manufacturing weaknesses. There is one sector where this ecosystem operates at the absolute global cutting edge: memory. YMTC and CXMT lead this charge. YMTC achieved a breakthrough in 3D NAND, the long-term storage memory used in solid-state drives and phones. Their proprietary X-tacking architecture allows them to build up to 294 layers of memory cells. Chinese firms are now producing high-density memory chips that rival premium offerings from global giants. Looking at this top 10 memory companies list, the presence of players like GigaDevice and Montage Technology proves China's competitive depth in this specific sector. CXMT plays a similar role in the DRAM market. DRAM is the high-speed working memory for active processing, and CXMT is currently unleashing high-speed DDR5 memory at massive scale. This rapid scale-up floods the market with domestic capacity. The sudden increase in supply threatens to oversupply the broader market and compress global profit margins. In the memory sector, these companies are actively disrupting the global pricing structure and challenging entrenched market leaders. The brains of this ecosystem are the fabless designers, companies that create the chip blueprints but outsource the manufacturing. Highlighting this list of top 10 processor companies, HiSilicon sits at the very top. HiSilicon acts as the tip of the spear for AI and premium mobile processors. They maintain design competitiveness for Huawei's flagship devices despite severe supply chain sanctions. Further down the stack, companies like Unisoc and GigaDevice focus on the vast mid-tier consumer electronics market. They design mobile SoCs, systems on a chip, that integrate all computer components onto one die, along with standard microcontrollers. These microcontrollers, or MCUs, are small computers dedicated to a single specific task. As noted in this MCU company ranking, these components are essential for range, efficiency, and logic in the automotive and EV markets. These design firms ensure that every tier of the Chinese hardware market, from budget smartphones to premium electric vehicles, has a viable domestic silicon option. Bringing the capabilities of these 10 companies together gives us a clear, objective map of the ecosystem's true global standing across a modern hardware device. In this X-ray view, memory and power modules glow green, indicating full self-sufficiency. Mature logic chips glow yellow, relying on massive scale. The central processor glows red, representing the persistent bottleneck from the lack of EUV lithography. This heat map illustrates a calculated strategy, conceding the absolute limits of AI hardware to guarantee the survival and independence of the broader industrial base. This reality has direct implications for global hardware manufacturers, tech investors, and supply chain managers. Relying on a single Western-aligned supply chain is no longer a viable guarantee of stability. Qualifying dual supply chains has become a mandatory business practice. While advanced AI development remains physically bottlenecked in China, Chinese memory and mature logic have reached a scale where they are high-quality, viable alternatives for everyday electronics. The ultimate trade-off of the last 5 years is the permanent fragmentation of the global technology landscape. China is currently executing a massive physical relocation of digital infrastructure, pulling data out of its dense coastal megacities and pushing it thousands of miles inland. Cloud infrastructure here serves as the physical engine running the world's second-largest economy, dictating how fast a shipping container clears a highly automated port or how a factory floor adapts to supply chain shocks. The government calls this strategy Eastern Data, Western Computing. It is a systematic, state-directed effort to transfer massive computational loads from the energy-hungry East Coast to the renewable-rich Western provinces. This geographic migration is accelerating because of a specific technological demand, the explosive growth of generative AI and large language models. Generative AI refers to algorithms that can create new content, like text or code, while large language models are the massive neural networks trained on vast amounts of text to understand and generate human language. By the first half of 2025, the demand for AI training and inference pushed the Chinese cloud market past the 100 billion yuan mark. The market is aggressively rotating away from traditional general computing towards intelligent, AI-native computing, turning server racks into strategic national assets. For a multinational IT leader, this creates an immediate operational problem. You cannot simply copy and paste your existing AWS or Azure architecture into mainland China and expect it to work. Strict data localization mandates force foreign companies to rely entirely on domestic providers. The most critical of these is the Personal Information Protection Law, or PIPL, a comprehensive privacy statute that heavily restricts how data can be transferred outside of China's borders. Once you commit to hosting locally, you enter a highly fragmented market. The landscape is split between legacy consumer internet giants on one side and state-backed telecommunication carriers on the other. This diagram plots the top 10 providers based on their structural DNA rather than their market share. The horizontal axis maps their focus from consumer and media applications on the left to heavy enterprise and industrial use on the right. The vertical axis measures their technical foundation, from AI and software native at the top to infrastructure and network native at the bottom. Procuring cloud services in China requires matching your specific enterprise workload directly to the operational DNA of your vendor. Selecting a provider is a strategic alliance. We start our countdown with the bottom half of the top 10. These 5 providers are highly specialized, built to serve distinct, narrow use cases. Coming in at number 10 is Inspur Cloud. Inspur dominates the public sector, securing deeply integrated government projects and state-level data infrastructure. The trade-off with Inspur is commercial agility. It does not offer the advanced generative AI developer tools that commercial enterprises expect from modern cloud platforms. Our number 9 provider is Kingsoft Cloud. Kingsoft positions itself as an independent, conflict-free hosting provider. They offer standard enterprise workloads without forcing you to lock into a massive consumer tech ecosystem. Number 8 is China Unicom's Unicom Cloud. As a state-backed telecom operator, it provides absolute data sovereignty for infrastructure-heavy industries like utilities and transportation. Number 7 is ByteDance's Volcano Engine. ByteDance processes massive volumes of video data for platforms like TikTok and Douyin, and Volcano Engine gives enterprise customers access to that exact same media processing architecture. Volcano Engine is also driving aggressive AI adoption through its Daobao model. Daobao currently processes over 50 trillion tokens a day, optimized specifically for high-volume recommendation algorithms and media delivery. Rounding out the specialists at number 6 is Baidu AI Cloud. Baidu operates as a pure-play AI infrastructure provider, running its ERNIE model as a service on domestically produced Kunlun chips. Model as a service is a cloud setup where providers offer access to pre-trained machine learning models via application programming interfaces, removing the need for companies to build them from scratch. Choosing any of these 5 specialists forces a strict decision. A multinational company must weigh extreme regulatory safety against hyper-specialized media capabilities or pure AI processing. Moving into the top 5, the primary competitive advantage shifts to massive ecosystem scale.
Number 5 is Tencent Cloud. This chart shows Tencent plotted squarely in the upper left quadrant, combining consumer and media focus with AI and software-native capabilities. Tencent leverages its massive WeChat and QQ social platforms to offer frictionless integration for live streaming and real-time audio and video. However, its current growth is constrained by the limited supply of advanced AI computing resources. That brings us to number 4, China Mobile's Mobile Cloud. With a subscriber base of roughly 990 million users, China Mobile provides an unmatched physical advantage for 5G edge computing and the remote management of Internet of Things devices. At this tier, the strategic choice is binary. A company must decide if its priority is seamlessly reaching hundreds of millions of individual consumers or managing vast physical fleets of connected industrial devices. Entering the top 3, the focus shifts entirely toward absolute infrastructure scale, national stability, and hardware sovereignty. Number 3 is China Telecom's Tianyi Cloud. It is currently the world's largest telecom cloud and the undisputed leader among China's state-backed carrier clouds. China Telecom is the optimal choice for companies that require a multi-site WAN, a wide-area network, which connects local networks across long geographical distances. This setup provides distributed factories with absolute network determinism and reliable uptime. Coming in at number 2 is Huawei Cloud. Huawei delivers hardware and software integration tailored specifically for heavy sectors like smart manufacturing and aviation. Huawei achieves full-stack hardware sovereignty by designing and running its own proprietary Ascend chips. This completely isolates an industrial workload from any potential foreign supply chain shocks or export controls. The critical trade-off for Huawei is flexibility. Achieving this level of sovereign security requires a company to commit to deep hardware lock-in within Huawei's specific ecosystem. China Telecom and Huawei represent the choice for heavy B2B industrials. In these sectors, physical network control and sovereign security easily outweigh commercial agility. This chart shows the undisputed market leader, Alibaba Cloud, coming in at number 1. With a 36% market share, its sheer scale dwarfs the rest of the competition in mainland China. Alibaba's structural DNA makes it the foundational platform for omni-channel retail and e-commerce deployments. They are currently executing an aggressive rollout of advanced, commercially viable AI agents. These agents are driven by their proprietary Tongyi Qinwen large language model ecosystem, which spans over 170,000 derivative models. The risk here is data proximity. Utilizing this infrastructure places your enterprise data directly inside the operational ecosystem of China's most powerful retail competitor. Alibaba remains the default standard for commercial and retail agility, provided a foreign enterprise is willing to navigate intense domestic rivalries. Treating a Chinese cloud provider as a basic server host or a simple data conduit ignores the current technological reality of the market. Choosing an internet giant like Alibaba, Tencent, or ByteDance gives you access to cutting-edge model-as-a-service capabilities and direct links to Chinese consumers, but it introduces complex data perimeter risks. Opting for a state or hardware builder like Huawei or China Telecom guarantees compliance with data localization laws and provides 5G factory integration, but you sacrifice commercial agility. This diagram shows how your core business type dictates your path. Manufacturing and heavy industry branch toward Huawei or China Telecom.
Retail operations route to Alibaba. Media and consumer applications point directly to ByteDance or Tencent. For multinational enterprises operating in China, the definitive architectural recommendation is the hybrid cloud model. In this model, you keep your global control plane centralized on AWS or Azure. This maintains your international governance, security protocols, and overall network visibility. You then deploy your localized data plane exclusively on the Chinese provider, whose industrial DNA matches your exact operations on the ground. In this AI-native landscape, a cloud provider functions as a strategic partner that dictates the operational reality for every enterprise in mainland China.
Discussions about global beverage dominance usually evoke images of American soda giants pushing massive volume, or European conglomerates consolidating legacy beer brands. But the center of gravity has shifted. The Chinese beverage ecosystem is a $3.2 trillion market, defined by intense modernization and vast scale. This chart shows current market capitalizations. Coca-Cola sits around $325 billion and Pepsi near $208 billion. But the Chinese liquor brand Kweichow Moutai commands a valuation of $262 billion, crowding out Western legacy brands in profitability. And on the retail side, the fastest-growing coffee chains are now entirely domestic. Failing to account for this data obscures the rise of the barbell economy. The middle of the retail market is hollowing out, leaving profitability only at the polarized extremes of ultra-luxury or hyper-convenience. To understand how to survive this environment, we're counting down the top 10 Chinese beverage giants based on their 2024 and 2025 revenue. Every company on this list faces a brutal operational trade-off. They must decide whether to defend their low-margin, high-volume traditional drinks or pivot their resources into highly profitable premium health segments. This chart shows our evaluation framework. We are looking past sheer revenue numbers. By plotting these companies on a grid measuring price point against consumer age, we can identify exactly which demographic each brand has successfully monopolized. Surviving the world's most hyper-competitive consumer market requires extreme specialization. Companies that attempt to cater to everyone are watching their margins compress. We start with the volume defenders. Number 10, Uni-President, and number 5, Master Kong, known corporately as Tingyi, built their empires on massive legacy distribution networks, pushing traditional teas and juices. With macroeconomic growth slowing, Master Kong relied on defensive pricing. By implementing hikes across legacy tea and water lines, they forced gross margins up to 33.1% to squeeze profit from stagnant sales volumes. Number 6 is Wahaha Group. They rely on deep brand nostalgia, pushing massive production volume through traditional retail channels. Wahaha achieved a 40%. This chart shows how that acquisition backfired. Contracting consumer demand triggered a massive 3 billion RMB goodwill impairment, an accounting charge reducing the value of an acquired asset. Because of this write-down, projected 2025 net profits dropped by 30 to 40%. Legacy distribution moats and raw volume are no longer enough to guarantee profitability. If a company fails to transition cleanly to premium products, the financial consequences they face are immediate and severe. Over on the health-conscious side of the barbell, we find the dairy duopoly, number 3 Mengyu and number 2 Yili Group. Both companies face a shaky recovery in basic milk consumption. To survive, they are shifting capital away from stagnant dairy volume and pushing aggressively into high-protein and functional health products that command higher shelf prices. Number 8 Nongfu Spring executed a sharp pivot. They tapped into urban youth tea culture, dominating the sugar-free, ready-to-drink market with their Oriental Leaf brand. To support this, Nongfu Spring directs its capital expenditure into building factories directly at remote natural water sources, acquiring and maintaining physical assets. This infrastructure yields severe pricing power. In 2024, Nongfu Spring commanded gross margins near 60% and drove a 32.3% surge in tea revenue. Number 7 is Luckin Coffee. They operate outside traditional retail, using a tech-first, app-only model designed strictly for pickup and delivery. By combining frictionless digital ordering with rapid expansion and flavor innovation, Luckin Coffee surged past Starbucks to become the dominant chain in the Chinese market.
But that agility comes with strict trade-offs. To maintain market share, Luckin operates on razor-thin margins, locked in a perpetual, cash-burning price war with local competitors. Capturing the modern Gen Z consumer demands high-speed digital delivery and continuous research and development. Companies operating here trade traditional high margins for hyper-growth. At the opposite end of the barbell lies the extreme luxury market, traditional Baiju. Number 4 on our list is Wulangye Yibin. Wulangye runs a dual-pronged operation. They push ultra-premium lines for banquets, while deploying their massive production scale to expand into lower-tier cities and rural markets. The core risk of this strategy is brand dilution. Balancing extreme luxury prestige with mass-market accessibility is a volatile tightrope. If the product becomes too common, the wealthy buyer abandons it. That brings us to the undisputed king of the sector, and number 1 on our list, Kuaichao Maotai. Maotai bypasses the mass market entirely. Their meticulous, multi-year production process involves over 165 distinct steps. Strict adherence to ancient distillation techniques forms their prestige. Their primary economic weapon is absolute scarcity. Maotai deliberately caps its annual production output at roughly 70,000 tons, ensuring demand perpetually outstrips supply. That scarcity translates directly to profitability. Maotai consistently reports gross margins exceeding 90%, pushing its market capitalization to $262 billion. When meticulously restricted, absolute cultural cachet creates an economic moat that is entirely immune to standard volume-based competition. All 10 of these giants are currently navigating a structural demographic shift. Young adults are demonstrating rapidly fading interest in heavy alcohol, while older demographics scale back their consumption for health reasons. This contraction has fueled the new alcohol category. Consumers are moving toward low ABV fruit wines, craft beers, and ready-to-drink cocktails that prioritize smooth flavors over heavy intoxication. Low ABV stands for low alcohol by volume, indicating a lower concentration of alcohol in the drink. This chart illustrates the financial trajectory of that shift. While traditional beer volume remains stagnant, the craft beer segment alone is projected to rocket to 93.5 billion RMB by 2025. A slow is fast strategy now guides the market. Sustainable profitability and focused innovation have replaced the drive for aggressive, volume-only expansion. To survive the next decade, beverage companies must stop selling volume-based necessities. They must transition to selling targeted emotional fulfillment and health optimization. This decision tree maps the playbook for the Chinese market. Executives face a rigid choice between legacy tradition on one side and new-age agility on the other. Relying strictly on legacy volume and traditional retail shelves leads to margin collapse. It is impossible to price hike out of a shrinking demographic indefinitely. Capturing youth market share demands relentless flavor innovation and seamless digital delivery. And cultural legacy still commands the highest valuations in the world, provided it is protected by strict scarcity. In this sophisticated, bifurcated landscape, margin strength and targeted demographic lock-in are the only metrics that determine survival.
Heavy industrial robots are now the primary drivers of China's low-altitude economy, executing complex physical labor from the air. The low-altitude economy refers to economic activities conducted in airspaces below 3,000 meters using manned or unmanned aerial vehicles. China currently controls 70% of the global drone market, outperforming the production capacity of every other nation combined. This production scale has a projected market valuation exceeding $200 billion by 2025. This path relies on Shenzhen's dense concentration of printed circuit board and surface mount technology manufacturing. Printed circuit boards are the physical foundations that connect electronic components, while surface mount technology is the high-speed automated process used to assemble them. However, this rapid manufacturing expansion has fractured the market into a collection of highly specialized, isolated platforms. Procurement today is a decision to lock a business into a specific operational ecosystem that dictates how and if a company can scale. Industrial drone tasks are too varied for any single brand to perform effectively as a generalist. Selecting an architectural design that does not align with your specific task leads to stranded capital and severe workflow bottlenecks. To find the actual return on investment, we are segmenting China's top 10 drone manufacturers strictly by their intended industrial application. Efficient operations depend on matching the exact structure capability of the aircraft to the physical requirements of the mission. At number 10, Higrate focuses almost exclusively on swarm computing for experiential marketing and entertainment. These systems can synchronize thousands of aircraft for a light show, yet they offer zero capability for industrial logistics or data collection. Transitioning from massive swarms to legacy industrial stability, number 9 is Unique. Unique utilizes a hexacopter, or 6-rotor design, to provide payload redundancy during inspections. If one motor fails, the remaining 5 maintain flight, a safety margin that nimble quadcopters cannot provide. These extreme niches demonstrate that specialized industrial requirements quickly invalidate the utility of general-purpose consumer hardware. Number 8 is SF Express and their subsidiary Phoenix Wings, who manage a regional cargo network for intercity shipping. Their aircraft rely on BVLOS technology, which strictly limits them to pre-approved government corridors. BVLOS stands for Beyond Visual Line of Sight, referring to operations where the drone flies outside the pilot's direct view. Number 7 is Meituan UAS, operating a disruptive delivery model that targets food and parcel transit in under 15 minutes. Meituan does not sell hardware to the public. Businesses must integrate their entire supply chain into Meituan's proprietary service network to participate. Number 6, Autoflight produces ton-scale eVTOL systems for heavy freight. eVTOL stands for Electric Vertical Takeoff and Landing, aircraft that launch vertically using electric propulsion. Deploying these heavy systems requires significant infrastructure, including complex aviation certifications and the construction of dedicated landing pads. The primary bottleneck for aerial logistics is not motor power or battery life, but the availability of physical infrastructure and government regulatory approval. For large-scale surveying, number 5 is JOAV. JOAV's fixed-wing vertical takeoff architecture provides a 180-minute flight endurance, allowing for the continuous mapping of long-distance power lines. These fixed-wing systems require a significantly larger operational footprint and a higher initial capital investment than standard multirotors. Number 4, Robotics, targets the high-stakes requirements of public safety and first response. Autel's advantage is a no-geofencing firmware policy that ensures absolute pilot control. Geofencing is a software feature that uses GPS to create virtual boundaries, automatically preventing drones from entering restricted airspaces. In critical public safety missions, absolute control and extreme endurance are more valuable than access to third-party app stores. Number 3 is EHang, focused on urban air mobility using pilotless passenger aircraft. This means automated, low-altitude air transportation within metropolitan areas. This is a speculative long-term gamble. Realizing a return on investment depends on the construction of city vertiports and the slow growth of public trust. Number 2, XAG, shifts the focus to raw physical labor in smart agriculture. XAG's specialized drones for rugged spraying and seeding generate immediate financial returns for farmers by reducing their reliance on manual labor. This specialization makes XAG units highly effective for liquid payloads, but completely useless for industrial inspections or cinematography. This creates a clear contrast between the decade-long wait for passenger drone profits and the immediate financial results generated by agricultural tools on the ground. At number 1 is DJI, the dominant generalist manufacturer that currently leads the industry. By vertically integrating their own sensors, gimbals, and flight controllers, DJI achieves the industry's highest price-to-performance ratio. However, buyers are locked into a walled garden ecosystem that faces significant geopolitical scrutiny and the threat of regional operational bans. While DJI is the default choice for general media, it carries the highest level of geopolitical risk for corporate fleets. This chart plots the top 10 manufacturers across payload capacity and AI autonomy. These companies utilize solid-state batteries and sensor fusion to increase capabilities. This data tracks the rise of autonomous, networked robots executing high-intensity tasks without direct human steering. Integrating these specialized systems allows an enterprise to significantly reduce workplace danger, operational time, and overhead costs. But to achieve these gains, a business must physically restructure its ground workflows to include automated docking and professional fleet maintenance. Successful integration requires a comprehensive investment in the physical infrastructure and ground-level maintenance teams needed to support a robotic workforce. For media and budget efficiency, DJI. For public safety without restrictions, AUTEL. For rugged precision farming, XAG. For long-range industrial mapping, JOAV. Match your specific payload and regulatory reality to the correct specialized brand or risk grounding your entire technological investment.
This chart shows the projected global e-commerce revenue for 2025. China is on track to hit $3.2 trillion, while the United States sits at a distant $1.8 trillion. If you try to capture a slice of that market using a standard Western playbook, optimizing for search engines and offering basic discount codes, your brand will be completely invisible. That happens because the Chinese internet operates through super apps. Platforms like WeChat and Alipay centralize social media, digital wallets, and shopping into a single enclosed environment. Inside these ecosystems, the baseline consumer expectation is now instant retail. This is a fulfillment model where the time between an order and its arrival is measured in minutes or hours rather than days. Delivering at that speed carries a heavy operational cost. To compete, brands have to maintain inventory in local bonded warehouses, specialized free trade zones that allow for rapid domestic shipping while managing cross-border taxes. To achieve scale here, you trade an independent customer journey and standalone websites for algorithmic discovery. You live or die by the math of the super app. This chart shows our scenario match evaluation framework. We are mapping the top 10 Chinese e-commerce companies across two axes: content-driven versus transactional on the x-axis, and premium versus value on the y-axis. Coming in at number 10 is Xiaohongshu. It operates as a trust engine driven by key opinion consumers, or KOCs. KOCs are everyday users whose authentic product reviews create more trust than professional advertisements. It heavily targets the ingredient party, a demographic of shoppers who meticulously research active chemical components before buying. The trade-off is that while Xiaohongshu seeds deep consumer trust, it suffers from slow direct sales conversions. It functions primarily as an educational funnel. Number 9 is Goofish. It dominates the consumer-to-consumer secondhand market, catering to a highly engaged, eco-conscious Gen Z user base. Number 8 is VipShop. It uses a transactional strategy built around SVIP loyalty flash sales to move luxury inventory at a steep discount. SVIP is a premium membership tier that grants high-spending users exclusive access to limited-time price drops. These three platforms prove that cultivating hyper-targeted community trust and offering exclusive access now generates more reliable returns than broad search visibility. We now shift our focus away from these niche communities, turning instead to the industrial behemoths of high-volume logistics and rapid algorithmic deployment. Number 7 is Shein. Operating as a global exporter, Shein integrates its storefront directly into an algorithmic, on-demand manufacturing supply chain to achieve unmatched speed to market. But extreme volume comes with strict trade-offs. Shein's operational scale has attracted intense regulatory scrutiny and sustainability concerns across Western markets. Number 6 is Meituan. It acts as the local lifeline, managing a hyper-local logistics network, processing over 60 million instant retail orders every day. Number 5 is Kuaishou. Instead of relying on massive logistics hardware, it empowers small to medium video streamers to drive massive e-commerce conversions, targeting consumers in China's lower-tier cities. For these platforms, hyper-local logistical dominance and rapid, algorithmically guided supply chains have entirely replaced traditional brand loyalty programs. The top 4 companies represent a direct clash between infinite content discovery and flawless fulfillment. Number 4 is Douyin. It operates as a discovery engine, merging entertainment with merchant-led live streams to generate $580 billion in impulse buy GMV. GMV stands for Gross Merchandise Value, the total dollar value of everything sold on the platform before expenses are deducted. Its primary vulnerability lies in that exact model. Highly algorithmic impulse buying leads to significantly higher product return rates compared to intent-based search commerce. Number 3 is JD.com.
In contrast to Dalian's chaotic social commerce, JD maintains a strictly controlled, first-party automated supply chain. This guarantees both brand safety and delivery speed. Number 2 is Pinduoduo, or PDD. It engineered explosive growth in everyday value items through social group buying mechanics and shipping goods directly from the manufacturer to the consumer. The top of the market is deeply fractured. Brands are forced to choose between the premium safety of automated logistics with JD or the aggressive scale of social value with PDD and Dalian. Number 1 is Alibaba, the parent company of Taobao and Tmall. It is the apex ecosystem, boasting over $1.4 trillion in GMV across consumer retail, cloud computing, and logistics. Its power comes from internal synergy. Tmall acts as a gated community for premium global brands, while Taobao handles infinite everyday consumer retail. Yet Alibaba is facing an innovator's dilemma. Nimble, content-first applications are actively eroding Alibaba's traditional, search-based market share. Even a fully integrated $1.4 trillion ecosystem remains vulnerable if it fails to perfectly merge algorithmic discovery with instant checkout. Synthesizing this playbook for modern digital retail, 2 rules emerge. First, content has become commerce. Second, rapid logistics have replaced brand loyalty. This represents the end of the traditional sales funnel. Artificial intelligence and tight social integration have collapsed the time between initial product awareness and the final purchase down to seconds. This map shows the specific global penetration of Chinese e-commerce platforms across North America, Europe, and South America. The advanced Chinese model is aggressively expanding outward, capturing Western market share through platforms like Temu, AliExpress, and TikTok Shop. Western legacy retailers face a dire choice. They have to overhaul their own logistics networks and social marketing strategies, or face obsolescence. China currently functions as the active research and development lab for global retail, exporting strategies that will dictate how consumers shop for the next decade. Look at global electric vehicle manufacturing today, and one data point clarifies the scale of the market. China now produces over 70% of the world's electric vehicles, establishing itself as the global automotive center. This chart shows the surge of new energy vehicles, or NEVs, a term covering battery electric and plug-in hybrid cars. By 2025, NEV penetration in China reached 47.9%, a rate that dwarfs adoption in any other major market. That domestic volume is spilling over borders. Chinese automakers shipped nearly 6 million vehicles globally in 2025, leaving international buyers to navigate a brand landscape filled with names they've never heard of. The industry's center of gravity has permanently moved east. For consumers today, this shift requires a complete reset of brand loyalties and decades-old assumptions about automotive quality. The aggressive price cutting of the early 2020s has matured into a competition based on value. Victory now goes to whoever can deliver the most advanced technology at the most efficient price point. China's manufacturing lead comes from extreme structural efficiency and supply chain control. Highly automated systems, like these robotic arms assembling a chassis, make the old advantage of low labor costs effectively irrelevant. Heritage and legacy prestige are losing their influence. In the current market, a vehicle's worth is dictated by its software capabilities and its battery architecture. This countdown analyzes the top 10 Chinese EV makers of 2025 by examining the specific strategic moats protecting their dominance. We can categorize these 10 brands into 3 distinct archetypes: digital ecosystems, state giants, and vertical integration pioneers. Understanding these corporate blueprints is the only way to see where the future of global mobility is actually going. Number 10 is NIO. Their moat is physical infrastructure. They have invested billions in a proprietary battery swap network, giving drivers a full charge in 3 minutes, removing the need for traditional plug-in charging. Building and maintaining a massive network of physical stations is a high-cost strategy. These overheads keep NIO's vehicle prices firmly in the premium luxury tier. At number 9 is Xiaomi. Their competitive advantage is a ready-made digital ecosystem. By transitioning from consumer electronics to autos, they used their massive smartphone user base to scale production to 410,000 units in 2025.
Building heavy physical hardware requires different manufacturing expertise. This shift creates long-term margin pressure that a traditional software company wouldn't face. Analio and Xiaomi prioritize entry into their proprietary digital and physical networks over the individual vehicle. Number 8 is Xpeng. They have built their brand on autonomous driving software, appealing to tech-first drivers who prioritize AI-driven mobility and advanced LiDAR systems. While Elite Software secures them partnerships with giants like Volkswagen, the regulatory hurdles for autonomous driving in foreign markets limit their global sales volume. Number 7 is Leap Motor. Their moat is ruthless cost control. By manufacturing 65% of their core components in-house, they reached profitability a year ahead of schedule. Their partnership with Stellantis provides global dealer access, but their focus on budget-friendly cars limits their appeal to the premium segment. Autonomy and manufacturing efficiency represent two divergent paths to disrupting the legacy automotive model. At number 6 is Li Auto. Their moat is practicality. They build EREVs, or extended-range electric vehicles, where a gasoline engine acts as a generator for the battery. This eliminates range anxiety for families not yet ready for pure electric. This practical approach led to massive sales in 2025, but it relies on a fossil fuel bridge technology that must eventually be phased out as pure battery ranges improve. Number 5 is Chang'an. Their moat is state-backed scale. They recently hit a milestone of 30 million vehicles produced and leveraged that industrial capacity through software partnerships with tech giants like Huawei. However, Chang'an manages a complex web of sub-brands like Avatar and Deepal that often overlap and confuse potential buyers. Bridge technology and state-sponsored scale provide immediate volume, but they carry long-term structural risks. Number 4 is Chery. They became China's top exporter by establishing dominance in emerging markets like South America and Southeast Asia before Western competitors arrived. Number 3 is SAIC Motor. Their moat is heritage. By using the MG brand, a badge with deep Western history, they achieve instant consumer trust in markets like the UK and Europe. Chery remains exposed to the economic volatility of the developing world, while SAIC relies on Western nostalgia to sustain its sales outside of China. Global expansion today requires a choice between conquering emerging markets or utilizing a familiar Western mask. Number 2 is Geely. Their moat is horizontal integration. They acquire diverse global brands, such as Volvo, and consolidate them under shared electric vehicle architectures. By sharing platforms between luxury brands like Lotus and mass market lines like Galaxy, Geely spreads its 21.8 billion yuan R&D budget across 3 million vehicles. This horizontal empire creates immense management complexity. Using identical underlying technology across vastly different price points risks diluting the prestige of their individual brands. Geely proves that Western history can be purchased as a shortcut, provided the technology underneath is unified. Number 1 is BYD. Their moat is total vertical integration. They produce nearly 80% of all vehicle components internally, including their own battery packs and power semiconductors. This level of control allows BYD to offer a price-to-performance ratio that Western automakers cannot match. In 2025, it propelled them to over 4.6 million global sales. However, BYD is entirely dependent on its own internal innovation. If their proprietary technology falls behind the market, the entire company lacks the external supply base needed to pivot quickly. Currently, BYD's structural efficiency makes it the world's most dominant modern automaker. Compare the traditional 7-year development cycle of legacy brands against the 3-year iteration cycle used in China. Chinese automakers can finish 2 full product cycles in the time it takes a Western rival to release one car. Treating the car as a software-defined product allows for monthly over-the-air feature updates. This speed leaves mechanical-focused rivals with vehicles that feel obsolete shortly after launch. Legacy brands face declining market share as the industry shifts its focus from mechanical perfection towards software capability. Chinese firms are circumventing high Western tariffs by building localized factories in regions like South America and Europe. Trade barriers are failing to stop this expansion. Instead, they are turning Chinese manufacturers into embedded multinationals. Multi-billion-dollar research into solid-state batteries and Level 3 autonomy aims to eliminate range anxiety and driving fatigue by 2026. As the physical pain points of driving disappear, the market will move toward competition in software services and connectivity. The next phase of dominance focuses on monetizing the driver's attention through software services. For consumers, the choice is between digital ecosystems for seamless tech integration or vertically integrated giants for maximum hardware value. These 10 companies have closed the manufacturing gap while evolving the car into a mobile software platform. The era of Chinese EV dominance is the established global reality.
Consumers today want highly affordable, rapidly changing trends on demand. But the legacy retail supply chain was built on a sluggish 9-month design-to-shelf cycle. When executives try to predict what people will want nearly a year in advance, they inevitably guess wrong. That leaves brands stuck with massive volumes of unsold seasonal inventory. To solve this, the Chinese apparel industry stopped acting merely as the manufacturing arm for Western designs. Instead, they engineered predictive, digital-first retail networks. Success in modern fashion no longer relies on a designer's seasonal intuition. It depends entirely on real-time algorithmic prediction. This timeline contrasts the traditional 9-month retail cycle with the new consumer-to-manufacturer, or C2M, model. C2M connects consumer data directly to the factory floor, shrinking the design-to-shelf process to just 3 to 7 days. The engine running this timeline is the small-order quick return mechanic. Factories produce micro-batches of just 100 units to test a design's market viability. To figure out what those initial 100 units should look like, artificial intelligence scrapes social media platforms, identifying microtrends in real time. If the data signal is positive, production instantly scales. This allows top brands to confidently drop up to 6,000 new items every single day without the traditional risk of dead stock. By accelerating the trend cycle to a disposable rate, the C2M model optimizes for speed and price, directly at the expense of garment longevity. Chinese fast fashion is not a monolith. Our top 10 countdown begins with legacy domestic giants who still rely heavily on physical infrastructure. Number 10 is Semir. They build high brand trust and deep market penetration by operating thousands of physical storefronts across China's lower-tier cities. That massive physical footprint comes with a cost. Semir has structurally adapted to global cross-border e-commerce much slower than its digital native rivals. Number 9, Tenera, takes a hybrid approach. They use Xiaohongshu, often called Red, China's premier lifestyle and social commerce platform for viral marketing, before opening physical boutiques in trendy Asian hubs like Seoul. But like Semir, Tenera's reliance on physical storefronts creates higher overhead costs, preventing the rapid, frictionless global scaling seen in app-only competitors. Moving to the early digital model, number 8 is Zaful. They push high-volume, low-cost apparel directly to over 150 million international buyers online. However, Zaful struggles to maintain brand loyalty against newer, more agile applications that utilize superior algorithmic targeting to predict exact consumer preferences. Number 7 is Peacebird, an omni-channel hybrid. They employ over 200 in-house designers to drop collections across e-commerce platforms and 1,200 physical stores. Because Peacebird maintains physical retail space and human design teams, their operating costs force price points higher, making it difficult to compete with budget apps. Number 6, Cupshe executes a highly specialized strategy. They dominate the direct-to-consumer swimwear niche by leveraging Amazon's massive distribution network. This strict specialization leaves Cupshe severely vulnerable to seasonal revenue shifts and restricts their growth to a very narrow product catalog. These 5 brands successfully dominate specific channels or niches, but they lack the pure algorithmic agility required to conquer the broader global trend market. The next tier of competitors abandons physical retail constraints entirely. These digital native platforms rely purely on social commerce and data scraping. Number 5 is Halara. They operate a crowd-sourced optimization model, actively using comments from Reddit and TikTok to dictate precise fit, size, and material adjustments. Because production is guaranteed by direct consumer feedback data, Halara reduces its inventory waste to under 10%. The trade-off is a lack of cohesive brand vision. The resulting aesthetic is highly reactive and often feels Frankenstein together, driven entirely by raw data.
Number 4, Cider acts as the Gen Z mood board.
They utilize a pick-a-mood interface and gather real-time feedback from a massive Discord server. Cider churns through these hyper-specific microtrends so rapidly that its garments often become functionally obsolete within a single season. Number 3, Urban Revivo, contrasts sharply with these digital pure plays. They are a premium upstart investing heavily in London design centers and localized Turkish production. Urban Revivo deliberately sacrifices the extreme price advantages of the C2M model to directly challenge Zara for the quality-conscious consumer. Number 2 is Temu. Their aggressive disruption strategy relies on heavily subsidized discounts and gamified shopping mechanics like group buying and countdown timers. Temu's high-speed, high-volume approach carries significant risks, a high probability of inconsistent product quality, and escalating regulatory scrutiny over international tariff loopholes. These 4 entities represent the total weaponization of user data. They trade traditional creative design for algorithmic certainty and viral engagement. Number 1 is Shein, the apex predator of the C2M model. They achieved massive global scale by seamlessly integrating algorithms directly with physical manufacturing. Shein's core operational advantage is coordinating a dense network of 3,000 microfactories in Guangzhou, compressing the design-to-shelf cycle to just 10 days. By mastering this ultra-fast small-batch production, Shein generated $38 billion in global revenue in a single year. Maintaining this speed requires hidden costs. The system demands intense labor requirements, including alleged 75-hour workweeks for factory employees. There are also massive environmental externalities. To sustain this global volume and rapid delivery speed, the company relies heavily on high-emission air freight shipping and the use of hazardous chemicals. Shein's massive success proves a stark reality. The ultimate optimization of speed and retail price requires offloading true costs directly onto labor and the environment. This quadrant chart navigates the bifurcated market. The horizontal axis measures price and speed. The vertical axis tracks production, algorithmic C2M to traditional design. Here, budget optimizers like Shein and Temu offer high returns for high-volume trend experimentation. The necessary compromise here is explicitly accepting that these garments are highly disposable and lack physical longevity. If you fall into the quality and style-conscious demographic, you should look toward brands like Urban Revivo and Peacebird. This upper tier provides the rapid agility of fast fashion, but actively maintains the physical quality controls found in legacy high street retail. Modern consumers must strategically align their platform of choice with their actual tolerance for garment lifespan and material quality. For the conscious consumer, there is an inherent structural incompatibility between the ultra-fast algorithmic model and environmental sustainability. The statistical reality of the fast fashion supply chain is severe, generating 26 million tons of annual textile waste in China alone. 85% of all clothing produced under this high-speed, low-cost paradigm ultimately ends up in landfills or incinerators. The strategic alternative for environmentally driven buyers is to pivot out of the C2M ecosystem and utilize the growing secondhand market through platforms like Xianyu. To summarize, the new global apparel standard is C2M, an ecosystem where consumer engagement data directly controls factory machinery. Second, hyper-cheap pricing is an illusion, artificially subsidized by severe, long-term environmental and labor tolls. Finally, the most dominant Chinese brands are evolving, moving past disposable app drops to establish premium, omni-channel global flagships. In an era defined by algorithmic retail, consumer power requires making purchases based on structural data and supply chain reality, rather than engineered digital suggestions.
China's top 500 listed companies represent a $14.2 trillion economy, and the foundational pillar supporting it is the national food supply chain. But looking at the 2024 macro data reveals a divergence. Total top-line revenues across these massive corporations dropped slightly, yet net profits rose by 7%. With revenue dipping as profits rise, companies are shifting away from volume-based growth to a rigorous internal focus on cost management and structural efficiency. Outside observers and new brands entering the space often look at China as a monolith of 1.4 billion mouths to feed. That perspective misses the reality of a divided landscape. The market is split between state-backed infrastructure giants operating on massive volumes and agile private companies chasing high-margin, functional niches. We are counting down the top 10 food companies based on how they engineer the modern Chinese diet, starting with the titans managing the national supply. We start with the macro pillars. These companies provide the logistical and industrial scale required to maintain national food security. Coming in at number 10 is Guangdong Hide Group. They manage the invisible upstream foundation of Chinese agriculture, generating over 125 billion RMB through animal feed production and agricultural research. Number 9 is WH Group. They operate a vertically integrated empire in a country that consumes 49% of the world's pork. Concentration on a single protein source exposes their entire operation to biological threats, such as cyclic swine epidemics, which can cause significant volatility in production costs. Number 8 is Ecommerce Arowana. They process 245 billion RMB worth of grains and edible oils annually. While they have a presence in almost every Chinese kitchen, that reach comes with thin margins. Their profitability is highly sensitive to fluctuations in global raw material costs. Number 7 is COFCO. As a state-owned enterprise, they manage $87.5 billion in revenue and coordinate agricultural trade corridors across nearly 40 countries. These pillars prioritize infrastructural stability over commercial agility. Their primary mandate is protecting national macroeconomic goals, not chasing consumer trends. Moving downstream from industrial infrastructure, we hit the retail shelves and the battle for neighborhood proximity. Number 6 is Foshan Haitian. They control 4.8. These companies have historically occupied convenience store shelves with instant noodles and ready-to-drink beverages. Now, a more health-conscious public is moving away from traditional processed foods. This is forcing both companies to innovate premium, healthier product lines to maintain their shelf space. Number 4 is Yili Group. Through a nationwide cold chain logistics network, they generate 115.8 billion RMB in revenue as Asia's top dairy producer. These shelf kings rely on established distribution networks. But as China navigates declining birth rates, that heavy physical infrastructure makes it difficult to pivot quickly to new consumption habits. Consumers are shifting toward functional wellness and the heart-to-price ratio, a metric measuring the emotional value a brand delivers relative to its specific price point. Number 3 is Mengniu Dairy. They are pivoting their R&D away from volume, focusing on sports nutrition and mobility products designed for an aging demographic. This chart shows Mengniu's revenue by product mix for 2023 and 2024. By prioritizing higher margin categories over basic liquid milk volume, they have increased overall gross profit margins to almost 40%. Number 2 is Nongfu Spring. They have expanded into zero-sugar tea and specialized healthy beverage lines. In a major internal shift, Nongfu's tea beverages have surpassed their core bottled water segment in sales, driving a 22.1% increase in net profit. Taking the number 1 spot is Eastrock Beverage. They operate with a product strategy centered on energy drinks, building resonance with the working class. They achieved a 73% increase in overall brand value in a single year. The trade-off is that their success is concentrated in one highly caffeinated niche, leaving them vulnerable to future health regulations. The growth factors in China today belong to these innovators who target specific lifestyles rather than the entire population. The top 10 list shows that success now depends on aligning scale with specific consumer lifestyles. We can map this dynamic on a matrix, measuring scale and infrastructure against agility and innovation. For investors seeking defensive resilience, the macro pillars own the bedrock supply chain. Companies like COFCO, Haidao, and Yihai populate the high-scale, infrastructure-heavy quadrants. For brands looking to compete, the right side of the matrix is the target. Nongfu Spring, Eastrock, and Mengniu sit in the high-agility, consumer-focused quadrants by delivering functional nutrition. This pie chart from Euromonitor shows the retail market by channel for 2024, highlighting a fragmented distribution landscape. The future of these agile brands depends on integrating with AI-driven instant retail and catering to the silver economy, which refers to the expanding market of senior citizens. In an era of efficiency, the path to a return on investment relies on navigating this structural divide and delivering functional value directly to the modern consumer. For years, the Chinese gaming industry was viewed primarily as a source of mobile-first templates. That era has shifted. Today, Chinese studios develop the technical frameworks and monetization models that set the global standard for interactive entertainment. The sheer economic gravity of this market is difficult to overstate. Within its own borders, China boasts a player base of 683 million people. In 2024 alone, domestic players spent over $49 billion on video games. But the domestic market is reaching saturation. To maintain growth, these companies execute a strategy known as Chuhai, the active export and expansion of Chinese digital products into overseas markets. Last year, Chinese titles extracted $20.46 billion internationally, heavily concentrated in the US, Japan, and the Middle East. The momentum difference is clear. Global mobile gaming revenue crept up 1.3%, while China's domestic sales surged 7.68%, proving the financial center of gravity shifted east. If you play video games today, your habits, your spending, and your expectations are being shaped by a Chinese-designed ecosystem, regardless of your geographic location. With these publishers dominating global storefronts, the modern player faces a continuous dilemma, deciding which corporate ecosystem actually respects their time and their wallet. Every game requires a specific input. Developers expect you to log in daily to maintain a streak, engage with aggressive live service monetization, or pull the lever on steep gacha curves, a lottery-style mechanic where you pay real money for a random chance to unlock a character or item. In exchange for those inputs, players receive a specific outcome. These studios deliver accelerated content updates every 6 weeks, high cross-platform fidelity, and gameplay loops finely tuned by artificial intelligence. To evaluate the top 10 Chinese studios, we will use this quadrant chart. It maps the player ecosystem based on 2 distinct metrics. The horizontal axis measures the required time commitment, from casual to hardcore. The vertical axis measures monetization, from free-to-play friendly up to extreme whale models, which rely on players willing to spend thousands of dollars. Plotting these 10 companies against their required effort and financial extraction provides a strict decisional guide. It reveals exactly what you are trading for your entertainment. We start at number 10 with Lemon Microfun. They operate titles like Gossip Harbor, utilizing a strategy of overwhelming casual players. They push up to 100 live ops events a month, rapid, limited-time updates designed to keep players constantly engaged. The trade-off here is straightforward. The core puzzle mechanics are simple to learn and provide a satisfying daily loop. However, the relentless pace of temporary events creates intense pressure to stay active, often pushing players toward microtransactions to keep up with the content treadmill. Number 9 is Bilibili. Rather than appealing to everyone, they monetize a highly specific ACG market: anime, comic, and games. They leverage their massive video sharing platform to feed players directly into specialized anime-style titles. Bilibili provides a highly tailored, community-driven experience. The catch is that their ecosystem is entirely insular. If you operate outside of the anime enthusiast bubble, their core mechanics and aesthetic will likely feel inaccessible. At number 8 is Paper Games, acting through their global brand Infold. With their sci-fi dating sim Love and Deep Space, they proved that targeting the female-oriented romance market can generate $1 billion in revenue. Players receive high 3D visual fidelity in a mobile romance game. In return, they face a monetization structure that ties necessary progression directly to their emotional attachment to the virtual characters. Lemon Microfun, Bilibili, and Paper Games prove a distinct modern reality. Extracting massive revenue does not require complex action combat. A studio simply needs to successfully monopolize a player's daily habits or emotional investment. Moving to studios that prioritize mechanical skill, number 7 is Kuro Games. Their flagship title, Weathering Waves, directly challenges genre kings by offering high-skill action combat and deep parry systems. Kuro offers mechanical satisfaction for hardcore players, but because they operate in the shadow of much larger rivals, their players assume the risk of long-term content droughts between major updates. Number 6 is Lilith Games. They have mastered the idle but deep global RPG genre, with titles like AFK Journey, where your squad auto-battles to accumulate resources while you are away from the screen.
Lilith provides a low-stress daily progression system that feels rewarding early on. Eventually, the honeymoon phase ends.
players inevitably hit a severe progression paywall that requires either months of waiting or hundreds of dollars to bypass, causing sharp player attrition. At number 5 is Game Science. In 2024, they delivered China's first global premium console blockbuster, Black Myth Wukong, selling roughly 30 million copies without a single microtransaction. Game Science offers a traditional trade-off. You pay a flat $60 fee upfront for graphics built on Unreal Engine 5, a top-tier development framework. In return, you get a finite single-player experience with no continuous live service updates. These 3 gameplay-first studios require players to pick their poison. You must choose between eventual content droughts, hard paywalls, or strict limits on how long the game will last. We reach the titans. Number 4 is Century Games, also known as FunPlus. They are the highest-grossing overseas Chinese publisher, driven by the $4 billion success of their strategy game, Whiteout Survival. Century demands deep, continuous investment in base building and alliance management, resulting in engaging social warfare. However, the ecosystem is entirely dictated by pay-to-win mechanics, where high-spending whales will always crush free players. Number 3 is miHoYo. Carrying an estimated $24 billion valuation, they pioneered a cost-plus art model, heavily reinvesting their profits into high-quality soundtracks and expansive open worlds that run across mobile, PC, and console. miHoYo delivers polished narrative content every 6 weeks. The toll for this consistency is a progression system gated by expensive, randomized gacha mechanics and heavily restricted daily resources. Number 2 is NetEase. Their $16 billion revenue in 2024 relied heavily on elite AI integration pipelines and global intellectual property partnerships, operating titles like Marvel Rivals and running Blizzard's World of Warcraft in China. The NetEase trade-off offers polished, AI-assisted technology that can scale massive multiplayer battles. But because they rely on large, high-risk bets rather than safe, incremental updates, their ecosystem can feel volatile. Number 1 is Tencent. With $34 billion in gaming revenue last year alone, they own the global infrastructure of the industry. They control evergreen multiplayer titles like Honor of Kings, PUBG Mobile, and Valorant. Tencent provides high replayability, matchmaking, and massive global esports battlegrounds. The cost is your autonomy. You operate as a data point in mathematically proven corporate formulas. These top 4 companies have transcended game development. They engineer inescapable digital economies, establishing the baseline rules of engagement that much of the global industry is forced to follow. Pulling back from the individual studios, this $50 billion landscape exposes the macroeconomic realities of modern interactive entertainment. First, artificial intelligence is compressing production scale. By combining traditional development with AI assistance, Chinese studios report that it reduces art asset generation time by over 80%, accelerating 3D modeling pipelines beyond what traditional methods can achieve. Second, consumer demand is bifurcating. We are seeing a market split between the explosive growth of ultra-lightweight social minigames and high-budget AAA titles that demand dozens of hours of attention. Original intellectual property and high-fidelity production are now the primary barriers to entry. To survive in this landscape, a studio must prove its own technical sovereignty rather than relying on established mobile templates. Because these ecosystems are built to extract either your time or your money, optimizing your gaming hours requires matching your personal resources to the correct corporate philosophy. Look at this summary scorecard. Time-poor but budget-conscious players should look to Game Science for finite narratives, or Lilith Games for casual progression. Optimizers willing to grind belong in miHoYo and Kuro Games. Finally, competitive social players seeking massive battlegrounds fit Tencent and Century Games. The Chinese gaming market now serves as a primary reference point for how these global digital economies function. Navigating it successfully requires choosing your investment based on what you are actually willing to trade for your entertainment. If you step inside the manufacturing floors of China's top appliance makers today, you won't find manual assembly benches. You will find sterile assembly lines, entirely automated by synchronized robotics building precision smart devices. For decades, Western consumers viewed Chinese manufacturing primarily through the lens of cheap, white-label OEM.
OEM stands for Original Equipment Manufacturer, meaning companies that produce parts or equipment to be marketed by another brand. The strategy was simple: compete on high volume and low labor costs. This line graph overlaid on a world map shows a massive pivot away from that model. By 2024, Chinese appliance export value surged, crossing the $98.5 billion mark. This growth is driven by the shift to OBM, Original Brand Manufacturer, where companies design, build, and sell premium tech products entirely under their own name. This creates a new problem for consumers and distributors. The market is now saturated with high-end Chinese brands offering advanced features. You can no longer make a purchasing decision based solely on finding the lowest price. To maintain their growth, the top 10 manufacturers in the country have split their focus. Some are pouring billions into app-based AI integration, while others are buying up European robotics firms to scale massive, heavy-duty industrial hardware. Choosing a Chinese appliance today requires understanding these distinct paths. It is a strategic investment into a specific technological ecosystem. We start with Haier Smart Home. They operate as an ecosystem builder. Rather than focusing purely on the mechanics of a washing machine or refrigerator, Haier prioritizes how those devices connect to each other to create a premium, lifestyle-focused smart home. To do this, they use a 3-in-1 localization strategy. They place their research and development, manufacturing, and marketing all within the specific region they are selling to. By tailoring their software and hardware to local habits, Haier pushed their overseas revenue to account for more than 50% of their total business. On the other end of the spectrum is Midea Group, the industrial heavyweight. They recently broke the 400 billion yuan revenue ceiling, driven by an entirely different philosophy. Instead of relying solely on consumer smart home ecosystems, Midea executes aggressive, tech-fueled mergers and acquisitions. They expand their footprint by acquiring legacy international brands, like Toshiba's home appliances division and the European kitchen brand Teka. They use these acquisitions to pivot hard into B2B sectors and industrial automation. By purchasing the German robotics firm KUKA, Midea ensured they control the heavy-duty machinery that actually builds the appliances. The trade-off here is clear. Haier's strategy asks you to buy into their proprietary software standard for a connected home. Midea asks you to trust their raw, industrial-grade manufacturing scale for hardware reliability. In the climate control sector, Gree Electric stands as the air conditioning purist. They hold over 100,000 patents and have spent decades engineering robust, highly durable hardware. However, this intense specialization is currently a vulnerability. In the first half of 2025, over 78% of Gree's income came from air conditioning alone. Combined with internal friction from restructuring their retail distributor channels, the company's revenue numbers have faced downward pressure. This opened the door for Xiaomi, acting as the AIoT disruptor. AIoT stands for Artificial Intelligence of Things, which is the combination of AI technologies with interconnected smart devices. The rivalry between these two companies goes back to a famous billion-yuan public bet between their founders over revenue growth, symbolizing the tech-first new guard challenging the traditional hardware titans. Xiaomi does not manufacture its own air conditioners. Instead, they leverage aggressive pricing and integrate outsourced hardware directly into their highly popular centralized smart home app. In June of this year, Xiaomi used this exact tactic to briefly surpass Gree in online air conditioning sales. The choice between the two requires weighing priorities. Gree delivers isolated, bulletproof hardware durability designed to last for years. Xiaomi sacrifices in-house manufacturing control to offer immediate, centralized software convenience. This rivalry highlights the defining battle across the modern appliance industry: the proven value of legacy hardware refinement versus the seamless interconnectivity of software. Moving to the living room display market, TCL operates as the scale master. They dominate the production of ultra-large screens, aggressively pushing out legacy Korean and Japanese manufacturers. This comparison bar chart shows exactly how they are doing it. TCL and Hisense have achieved triple-digit year-over-year shipment growth in advanced TVs, rapidly closing the gap with Samsung. TCL leverages its massive in-house OEM manufacturing control to aggressively undercut the price of OLED screens by using Mini-LED, a display technology that uses thousands of tiny LEDs to provide better contrast and brightness than standard LCDs. On the same chart, we see Hisense operating as the premium marketer. Their unit share in the premium TV tier jumped from 14% to 20%. They achieved this by shifting away from high-volume budget sales and building high-value global trust. Hisense secures that trust by investing heavily in massive global sports sponsorships, elevating their brand cachet to justify premium pricing for their advanced displays. Meanwhile, Skyworth acts as the pivot player. To maintain their baseline appliance revenue, they recently agreed to take over Panasonic's European sales operations, but Skyworth is quietly redirecting their primary innovation capital. Instead of fighting for stagnant TV market share, they are investing their resources heavily into distributed solar arrays and new energy systems for homes and businesses. In the modern display market, these Chinese brands have bypassed the label of cheap alternatives. They are now the primary global drivers of mini LED innovation and premium screen adoption. The kitchen sector operates differently. Here, hyper-specialization outpaces broad ecosystem building. Joyoung leads as the health tech innovator, focusing on highly integrated tools designed specifically for domestic, health-centric cooking routines. Bear Electric targets a different demographic as the niche budget king. They dominate online e-commerce channels by offering highly affordable, aesthetically pleasing, single-function devices tailored for younger renters. Contrast those entry-level appliances with Robom. They are the architectural choice, providing engineering-grade, built-in ventilation systems that require professional installation for premium hardcover homes. Success in the kitchen requires hyper-targeting specific consumer lifestyles. A budget-conscious renter has entirely different needs than a premium homeowner, and building a broad smart home network matters far less here than solving a highly specific daily task. The era of the Chinese appliance sector competing solely on being cheaper is closed. The manufacturing floors have evolved, and the export data proves the shift toward high-value technology is permanent. Global consumers must now evaluate these brands with the exact same rigorous scrutiny once reserved for legacy Western or Korean tech companies. This quadrant chart maps these companies. The vertical axis spans hardware to software, the horizontal spans budget to premium. Haier and Xiaomi lead the software premium space. Media and Gree dominate hardware scale. TCL, Hisense, and Skyworth bridge the middle. Joyoung, Bear, and Robom fill kitchen niches. There is no longer a default best appliance manufacturer. The right choice depends entirely on aligning a brand's strategic superpower with your specific daily needs and your long-term goals for your home. If you're upgrading your technology this year, the expectation of a cheap, highly capable flagship alternative is gone. You are going to pay premium prices. This chart shows the severe spike in memory costs, crossing the profitability threshold in late 2025. This cost storm wiped out the thin margins budget brands relied on to survive. Faced with these pressures, manufacturers abandoned low-margin assembly, pouring capital into proprietary research and development. The result is an era defined by hardware and software engineered entirely in-house. We are seeing the mass production of trifold screens and the integration of agentic AI. Agentic AI refers to artificial intelligence systems that can take independent actions to complete complex tasks, rather than just generating text or images. To get this tier of performance, you have to pay the new premium entry fee. That higher cost forces a choice between locking yourself inside a massive software ecosystem or buying from a hyper-specialized category dominator. Buying an isolated gadget based on specs alone is no longer a simple choice. Your next purchase requires deciding between the frictionless convenience of a walled garden and the power of modular hardware. Vivo, currently sitting at number 10 in global shipments, is attempting to avoid market stagnation by targeting highly specific consumer niches. By heavily subsidizing their production costs, Vivo delivers flagship-level camera hardware to consumers at a mid-tier price point. The trade-off is isolation. You receive an excellent standalone photography tool, but you lose access to the seamless cross-device lifestyle offered by ultra-premium competitors. Oppo, at number 9, is attempting to move out of the middle market through aggressive cross-device collaboration. This diagram shows Oppo's on-device compute capability. By keeping data processing localized on the phone's chip, the system can instantly understand the live scene in front of it without waiting for a signal to travel to a remote cloud server. Honor, moving into the number 8 spot, is using agentic AI as a primary differentiator in a crowded smartphone market. Instead of waiting for a voice command, Honor's operating system acts as a proactive, embodied assistant. It reads your context and preloads the software pathway you need milliseconds before you physically interact with the screen. Vivo, Oppo, and Honor provide highly capable hardware, but without a unified suite of laptops, tablets, and smart home appliances, they lack the gravity that keeps users bound to a single brand. Other companies ignore software ecosystems to build dominance in highly specific hardware categories. Number 7 is Anker Innovations. They execute an agile, multi-brand strategy covering audio equipment, robotic cleaners, and GaN chargers. GaN stands for gallium nitride, a material that enables power supplies to be significantly smaller and thermally cooler than traditional silicon. Anker provides reliable hardware, but you accept the friction of managing a fragmented collection of separate, unlinked applications on your phone. Number 6 is DJI. They took drones from fragile hobbyist toys and engineered them into essential tools for industrial agriculture and professional filmmaking. DJI holds a 90% grip on the professional drone market, driven by their seamless 360-degree FPV capabilities. FPV, or first-person view, is a piloting method where the user wears goggles displaying a live feed directly from the drone's camera. DJI's vulnerability is geopolitical. Buying into their hardware means navigating regulatory friction and the threat of software bans in Western markets. For buyers of Anker and DJI, the physical superiority of the hardware often outweighs the friction of software fragmentation. Inside the home, the demand for cinema-scale entertainment has shifted market dominance. Hisense, at number 5, bypassed legacy brands by focusing on physical scale. They produce 100-inch-plus laser TVs that deliver a lower cost per inch than OLED. OLED stands for Organic Light Emitting Diode, a display technology where each individual pixel generates its own light and color. To get that value, you have to accept Hisense's physical requirements. You need a large amount of uninterrupted wall space and control over the ambient lighting in your room. Number 4, TCL, is disrupting the premium tiers through their QD Mini LED technology. QD Mini LED combines quantum dot color filters with thousands of microscopic LED backlights to increase peak brightness. TCL's halo control technology prevents light bleeding in dark scenes, but optimizing these massive displays requires a complex installation effort in a normal home. Achieving this level of visual fidelity requires you to alter the physical architecture of your living space. At the top tier, brands demand complete lifestyle surrender in exchange for unified automation. Number 3, Lenovo, is pushing into enterprise-grade AI PCs. You pay a financial premium for edge computing, which processes heavy workloads locally on the device rather than in the cloud, even though casual users rarely use that power. Number 2, Xiaomi, has realized a hardware loop they call the human multiplied by car multiplied by home ecosystem strategy. Xiaomi's HyperOS uses a locked-in software architecture. Stepping outside their ecosystem to use a competitor's device often results in a degraded user experience. Taking the number 1 spot is the resurgent titan, Huawei. After surviving international sanctions, they built a sovereign domestic software infrastructure. By using their in-house Kirin chipsets, Huawei secured the supply chain control needed to produce complex physical hardware, like the Mate XT trifold. But adopting Huawei's Harmony OS carries a trade-off for global users. You face significant friction when attempting to integrate Western applications or Google services into their ecosystem. Accessing the most advanced connected technology now requires consumer submission to a single brand's architecture. We have reached a point where Chinese brands are setting the hardware pace. Instead of adapting Western designs, these firms are now the primary sources of form factor innovation. This chart shows the decision matrix for the modern consumer, starting with the ecosystem optimizer persona. If you value invisible automation across your daily life, you belong in the top right. You must accept the ecosystem moats built by Xiaomi or Huawei. However, the decision framework shifts significantly for the category specialist persona. If you demand the best hardware for each specific task, you must manage a modular, fragmented software setup and buy from specialists. This budget segment is under extreme pressure. With memory costs hitting historic highs and R&D budgets rising, the margin for affordable, high-performance hardware is shrinking significantly. Buying technology now requires an active decision on where to draw your digital boundaries. Hardware specifications have become secondary to the degree of software lock-in you are willing to accept.
When we try to measure the scale of a nation's military-industrial complex, we usually look for dedicated weapons factories. But walk the floor of a major automotive or shipping plant in China, and the line between civilian assembly and a military machine disappears overnight. In the United States, defense procurement operates in a largely closed ecosystem. Take Lockheed Martin, the world's largest defense contractor. 96% of its $71 billion in revenue last year came strictly from government defense contracts. State-owned enterprises, or SOEs, in China operate on a completely different financial model. An SOE is a legal entity created by the government to partake in commercial activities on the government's behalf. For the conglomerates producing the country's fighters, warships, and missiles, defense contracts typically account for only 20 to 40% of their total corporate revenue. If an analyst applies the Western pure-play definition, looking only at weapons sales, these companies look much smaller than they actually are. That filter completely ignores the billions of dollars these entities generate in the commercial sector. Judging Chinese military capacity solely by official defense revenue creates a massive blind spot. It obscures the scale of capital, vast engineering talent, and industrial infrastructure driving their military modernization. This structure is the result of civil-military integration. This is a deliberate state policy requiring commercial operations and profits to directly subsidize and fund military research, development, and manufacturing. This scatterplot maps defense contractors by total revenue on the bottom against defense reliance on the side. U.S. primes cluster high and left. Chinese SOEs sit low and far right. This horizontal push represents billions in civilian revenue, building ships, pouring concrete, managing telecommunications. Developing stealth fighters and hypersonic glide vehicles requires an enormous cash burn rate. By cross-subsidizing these military projects with steady commercial profits, the state avoids draining its official treasury to fund high-risk weapons research. However, running a military-industrial base through commercial entities carries a specific risk. It places China's most lucrative civilian export brands directly in the crosshairs of international defense sanctions and trade restrictions. Number 10 is the China National Nuclear Corporation. CNNC manages the country's commercial nuclear power plants, and this vast, sprawling civilian infrastructure creates the economies of scale necessary to maintain and expand the military's nuclear fuel cycle. Number 9 is the Aero Engine Corporation of China. The government carved AECC out as a dedicated monopoly to focus exclusively on solving historical weaknesses in metallurgy and advanced jet engine design. Designing reliable, high-performance engines requires staggering research and development budgets. AECC operates with extremely high burn rates, intentionally sacrificing short-term corporate profit margins to build long-term domestic capability. Number 8 is the China Electronics Technology Group. CETC completely dominates the domestic market for radars, electronic warfare, and C4ISR. C4ISR stands for Command, Control, Communications, Computers, Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance, forming the true digital backbone of modern military operations. This bar chart compares research reinvestment rates across major global defense firms. CETC is a severe outlier, plowing an industry-leading 22% of its total revenue directly back into R&D, dwarfing the single-digit averages of its international competitors. These three foundational SOEs enable the rest of the military's advanced platforms, but because their work relies heavily on cutting-edge physics and electronics, they are highly sensitive to global semiconductor export controls. Number 7 is the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation. CASC is the undisputed leader of the country's orbital logistics, satellite constellations, and manned spaceflight programs. Space megaprojects fall harsh boom and bust cycles. In 2023, CASC reported a 77% drop in defense-related revenue, highlighting the extreme financial volatility built into their business model. Number 6 is the China South Industries Group.
They manufacture military vehicles and munitions, but they fund those assembly lines using massive commercial profits from their ownership of Chang'an Auto, one of the world's largest electric vehicle brands. Number 5 is Norinco. While producing armored vehicles like these amphibious assault craft, they've diversified into commercial engineering. Since land armor has low margins, Norinco sustains growth through sheer export volume to the Middle East and Africa. For these ground and space giants, maintaining a successful global commercial brand is a strict requirement. Those international consumer revenues act as the financial lifeline necessary to subsidize their military operations. Number 4 is the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation. CASIC holds a near monopoly on precision strike missiles and air defense systems, while simultaneously executing the commercial Five Clouds satellite telecommunications strategy. Numbers 3 and 2 fall under the China State Shipbuilding Corporation. CSSC utilizes identical mega dry docks to build half the world's commercial cargo ships alongside advanced warships. Sharing infrastructure creates massive economies of scale, drastically driving down the unit cost of every destroyer and aircraft carrier. The risk is macroeconomic. CSSC's military output is tethered directly to the global commercial shipping market, leaving it exposed to international boom and bust trade cycles. Number 1 is AVIC, a monopoly controlling the design and production of nearly all PLA military aircraft. Maintaining this dominance has a steep cost. AVIC's profit margin shrunk to 21%, an innovation premium paid to build a fully domestic, self-reliant supply chain. These apex monopolies achieve production scales that are difficult to replicate in the West, but they can only do so by directly exposing their entire financial foundation to the volatility of the global macroeconomy. This deep integration exposes these state-owned enterprises to targeted external friction, primarily through international sanctions and lists like the U.S. Department of Defense's Section 1260H, which identifies Chinese military companies operating in America. The dual-use paradox means that enforcing sanctions to throttle military production cascades directly into the SOE's civilian operations. Restrictions meant for missile guidance systems end up threatening their lucrative electric vehicle and commercial shipping exports. This friction rarely bankrupts the SOEs. Instead, it accelerates their drive for absolute supply chain self-reliance, pushing them to spend heavily on domestic research to replace sanctioned Western technology. International sanctions do not halt production entirely. They function as a steep tariff on innovation, forcing these conglomerates to absorb higher component costs by draining their own commercial profits. This matrix summarizes 4 primary sectors: aerospace, naval, land, and electronics. Tracking the primary SOE and its commercial subsidizer reveals their exposure to global sanctions. For analysts, measuring Chinese military capacity solely by the official defense budget provides an incomplete picture of actual capability. The true indicators of Chinese defense health are found in the commercial sector. Tracking the export data of their shipping and automotive industries reveals the actual volume of capital subsidizing their weapons development. In an era defined by civil-military integration, treating these entities purely as weapons manufacturers is an analytical failure. Their military output is directly underwritten by their success in the global commercial market. This chart shows the distribution of the 1.26 billion global smartphone shipments in 2025. While Apple and Samsung hold the center, a ring of Chinese brands, Xiaomi, Vivo, and Transsion, is expanding, capturing significant shipment volume across Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. Within mainland China, the competition is even tighter. The top 5 manufacturers, Huawei, Apple, Vivo, Xiaomi, and Oppo, each hold over 15% of the market. The difference in shipment volume between the first and fifth place is only about 3.3 million units. To survive this gridlock, domestic brands are accelerating hardware cycles. While many Western flagships focus on software-led updates, the Chinese market is deploying hardware like multi-hinge screens that transform a standard phone into a full-size tablet. We are seeing displays that reach 8,000 nits of peak brightness and integrated operating systems that link a pocket device directly to the dashboard of an electric vehicle. Navigating this market requires looking past the hardware specs to understand the specific software and supply chain trade-offs that come with each brand. We use the Ecosystem Alignment Matrix to map brands by hardware focus and consumer profile.
At number 10, Meizu focuses on automotive integration. Their Meizu 22 functions as a digital key for the Flyme Auto 2 system. The trade-off is high. Most of Meizu's software value is only accessible if you also own a compatible electric vehicle from a partner brand like Geely. Ranking 9th is the ZTE Group, led by the Red Magic gaming brand. To maintain peak speeds on the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, Red Magic uses a physical 23,000 RPM turbofan combined with liquid metal cooling to prevent the chip from slowing down during heavy use. This sustained power comes with a physical cost. These devices weigh roughly 228 grams, making them significantly heavier and bulkier than a standard flagship. Number 8 is Transsion. They specialize in emerging markets, tailoring their hardware features for buyers in Africa and Latin America who require high-capacity batteries and localized camera tuning at lower price points. Focusing on high-volume budget tiers means Transsion generally lags behind in premium build materials and advanced research into high-end components. Realme takes the 7th spot. Their strategy involves placing high-tier Snapdragon 8 series processors into lower-priced devices aimed at younger consumers who prioritize gaming performance over camera quality. These niche brands offer peak performance in one specific category, but they require the consumer to accept noticeable compromises in the rest of the feature set. Moving toward the mainstream axis, we find brands balancing high-end features for broader audiences. Honor ranks 6th. Independent from Huawei, they regained access to Western 5G chips and Google mobile services, enabling them to run standard Android apps. Honor faces a unique challenge. Despite their hardware quality, they constantly battle to pull users away from their much larger former parent company. Oppo ranks 5th. They focus heavily on high-end imaging, using 200-megapixel telephoto lenses and 7,000 mAh batteries to appeal to mobile photographers. These massive camera systems make the devices top-heavy, and the specialized optics drive the retail price into the same bracket as top-tier Western flagships. Vivo sits at number 4. They have maintained the number 2 shipment position in China by releasing refined hardware that performs consistently across the board.
Vivo rarely relies on experimental features like trifold screens. While this makes them a reliable choice, they often lack the distinct hardware hooks that attract early adopters. These mainstream challengers offer high-quality, balanced devices, but they are constantly competing to stand out in a market where the top 5 brands are separated by very thin margins. The top 3 brands function as architects. They prioritize a unified digital environment where the smartphone is just one component of a larger hardware network. Xiaomi holds the number 3 spot. They have built an ecosystem that links thousands of consumer electronics and electric vehicles through their HyperOS platform, allowing a single software layer to control your home and your car. Xiaomi manages a massive catalog of products, ranging from smart bulbs to electric sedans. Maintaining this volume of distinct hardware makes their inventory highly sensitive to component shortages and can lead to consumer confusion over which model to buy. Apple remains the number 2 brand in China. They shipped 46.2 million units in 2025, sustained by the high switching costs associated with their closed iOS ecosystem. Relying on iterative hardware designs has made Apple vulnerable to domestic competitors, who are releasing more experimental form factors, while Apple's AI features are still maturing. Huawei reclaimed the top domestic spot in 2025. They replaced restricted Western components with an internal supply chain, using their own Kirin processors and Harmony OS to drive their high-end Mate and Pora series. This engineering independence led to the release of the Mate XT, the world's first trifold smartphone, proving they can execute complex hardware designs that other manufacturers are still prototyping. However, choosing Huawei means a total exit from the Western app ecosystem. Their devices do not support Google mobile services, which limits their utility for users outside of China. Buying into a top 3 brand means committing to a specific ecosystem. You're choosing which company will manage your data, your home, and your vehicle. While these hardware leaps are impressive, all 10 brands are currently facing a significant increase in production costs that will change the market in 2026. This results from a global memory crunch. The cost of raw silicon and manufacturing for storage components is rising across the entire supply chain. Rising material costs force manufacturers to raise prices to maintain profit margins, prioritizing premium devices.
The price gap defining the budget-friendly flagship killer has vanished, as consumers now see these manufacturing costs reflected directly in higher final retail prices. Because consumers are being asked to pay more for Chinese innovation, it is critical to evaluate which ecosystem features you actually need before purchasing. Prioritizing gaming or high-end photography? Niche hardware from brands like Nubia or Oppo offers the highest performance ceiling if you accept the extra weight. If your goal is a unified home and transit experience, the Xiaomi ecosystem provides the most comprehensive hardware integration currently available. For the most advanced form factors, like trifold displays, Huawei remains the premier choice, though it requires leaving the standard Google software ecosystem behind. The 2026 Chinese smartphone market is defined by silicon and scale. Choosing a device now means committing to one ecosystem and its specific trade-offs.
When humanoid robots perform perfectly synchronized martial arts or backflips on national Chinese television, Western observers often dismiss the displays as highly choreographed stunts. But the volume of actual production tells a different story. In 2025, manufacturers shipped over 18,000 humanoid robots globally, and nearly 90% of those units rolled out of Chinese factories. That massive scale happened because Chinese companies solved the hardest physical bottlenecks. They tapped into their existing, mature domestic supply chains to mass-produce rare earth motors and harmonic reducers. Harmonic reducers are highly precise gear mechanisms required to give robotic joints smooth, human-like movement. This localized supply chain operates under strict top-down government mandates. Beijing heavily subsidizes these components, treating embodied artificial intelligence as a necessary economic pillar to offset a shrinking workforce. The era of treating humanoids as laboratory experiments is over. The current surge in production volume is a deliberate realignment of global manufacturing infrastructure. The catalyst that activated this hardware scale is a new approach to software called Vision Language Action, or VLA foundation models. A VLA model is an artificial intelligence architecture that allows a machine to directly map visual inputs into physical movements. This diagram shows how the system bypasses traditional code-based language translation. Instead of reading lines of logic to figure out what to do, VLA models convert raw visual data directly into physical motor commands. This gives the hardware a reflex-like physical intuition, allowing it to react to its environment in real time. The trade-off for this autonomy is a massive appetite for data. VLA models require continuous streams of real-world physical interactions to train properly, meaning the enterprises that buy these early robots are effectively paying to beta test the manufacturer's AI. Because of the rapid influx of subsidies and AI advances, the market is completely flooded. There are now over 140 domestic manufacturers producing more than 330 distinct robot models. With hundreds of companies promising a fully automated future, supply chain operators and investors face a severe paradox of choice. They have to figure out how to separate the polished PR demonstrations from the platforms that are actually ready to work a factory floor. This decision tree shows the reality of the current market. Survival requires extreme specialization. To be useful, operators must match the specific mechanical features of the hardware to their specific environment. For automotive assembly, UBTech's Walker S2 is the definitive workhorse. Its core engineering advantage is an autonomous, 3-minute hot-swappable battery system. This allows the robot to work 24/7 shifts in unlit, fully automated dark factories without any human intervention. UBTech achieved this reliability through highly specialized engineering. Consequently, the Walker S2 is tightly optimized for structured factory floors and poorly suited for unpredictable consumer environments. In the same heavy industry space, XPeng leverages the company's electric vehicle pedigree. XPeng ports its existing Turing AI chips, autonomous driving networks, and battery. XPeng's timeline and success, however, are entirely tethered to the financial health and supply chain stability of its parent automotive company. For operators managing outdoor or hazardous environments, Deep Robotics built the DRO2 as an all-weather specialist. It features full-body IP66 protection. IP66 is an engineering rating certifying that the hardware is completely dust-tight and protected against heavy seas or powerful jets of water. When deploying capital in heavy industry, extreme physical agility is irrelevant.
Bespoke environmental sealing and autonomous power management are the trades that actually keep an assembly line moving. Outside the heavy industrial sector, a second group of companies is manipulating the market economics by treating robots like high-volume consumer electronics. Unitree utilizes aggressive, high-volume manufacturing to push its G1 and H2 models out the door at scale. This strategy has driven the baseline cost of a bipedal robot down to roughly $16,000 per unit.
Buyers gain financial accessibility at that price. What they sacrifice is the white-glove, bespoke enterprise integration and customization offered by the premium industrial competitors. Agibot took a different route to ecosystem dominance. They captured 39% of the global market by open-sourcing their EI brain datasets, allowing anyone to build upon their software foundation. By relying on third-party developers to build out specific capabilities, Agibot hardware lacks proprietary out-of-the-box perfection. These disruptors win by flooding the zone with affordable, accessible hardware. They have effectively transformed academic researchers and mid-sized companies into a decentralized research and development arm for their platforms. To survive the overwhelming volume produced by Agibot and Unitree, the remaining mid-market companies have to own highly specific, specialized edge cases. Kepler's Forerunner K2 focuses on rapid learning through GPU-accelerated parallel simulation to train thousands of virtual robots using reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is an artificial intelligence training method where algorithms learn optimal behaviors through trial, error, and programmed rewards. Kepler's reliance on simulation exposes them to the sim-to-real gap. This is an engineering vulnerability where unpredictable real-world physics, friction, and sensor noise cause perfectly simulated training to fail in the physical world. Fourier Intelligence built its GR series using expertise gained from medical rehabilitation devices. Because of this background, their robots feature clinically validated safety protocols specifically designed for close human-robot interaction. Engine AI designed the T800 around modular innovation. Operators can utilize its expandable chest and quick-swap limbs to physically adapt the hardware for different daily tasks. Robot Era positioned its L7 model as an interactive generalist. They maximized a 360-degree field of view to optimize the robot for public-facing logistics and service sector roles. Dabot engineered the Atom with a novel straight-knee walking mechanism that drastically improves battery efficiency. But the human light gate pushes the robot deeper into the uncanny valley. The uncanny valley is a psychological phenomenon where people feel a sense of unease or revulsion when an artificial figure looks and moves almost but not exactly like a natural human. As the underlying artificial intelligence software commoditizes, a robot's market value is dictated by these unique physical hardware adaptations. The concentration of these firms in the Yangtze and Pearl River deltas creates a localized hardware acceleration loop. Proximity allows manufacturers to iterate on physical components in days rather than months, supported by regional industrial policy. This extreme localization threatens to create a bifurcated global robotics market, with China operating on a completely separate, integrated supply chain from the West. This scatterplot maps the top companies, allowing integrators to evaluate manufacturers based on their price accessibility versus their industrial readiness. For automotive and heavy industry managers, the math is clear. You route capital directly toward Yuptech and Xpeng, paying a premium enterprise price for reliable 24/7 dark factory readiness. For academic researchers and budget-conscious logistics integrators, the strategy shifts. You leverage the scale and high accessibility of developer-ready platforms from Unitree and Agibot. Successful integration requires matching a specific bottleneck in your supply chain with the specific mechanical specialization of the manufacturer. In barely 2 years, the entire industry mutated from performing televised acrobatics to executing capital-generating assembly line shifts. Billions in capital are flowing into this space through major public offerings, turning physical robotics into the primary testing ground for large-scale artificial intelligence deployment. The hardware is viable today. The greatest risk to an enterprise is no longer the technology failing, but waiting for a mythical, perfect generalist robot, while competitors deploy effective specialists to lower their operating costs. If you want to order a large commercial vessel today, you are going to wait. The world's major shipyards are entirely booked through 2028, with virtually no delivery slots available before the end of the decade. For shipping executives, this creates a severe capital allocation problem. They have to decide exactly where to commit billions of dollars today to secure the vessels they need tomorrow. This chart shows the global shipbuilding output by nation for 2025. China dominates the market with 56.1% of the total production. South Korea follows at nearly 29%, and Japan holds 13%. That leaves the entire rest of the world with less than 5% of global capacity. For Western buyers, there are almost no viable alternatives outside of Asian shipyards to build large-scale commercial fleets. Avoiding Chinese yards to mitigate geopolitical risk means competing for a fraction of available delivery slots. That guarantees delayed compliance with new green regulations and ensures you miss upcoming market cycles entirely. Historically, Western buyers assumed China's maritime output relied exclusively on state-subsidized steel, a cheap labor pool, and the mass production of basic bulk hulls. In 2026, that ecosystem is building the most complex vessels on the water. The delivery of massive, high-end cruise ships like the Adora line proves they have mastered highly complex, technology-dense manufacturing. This is the result of what is called a complete industrial system. Chinese shipyards control their entire supply chain, from domestic steel plate production to the AI-driven logistics algorithms scheduling the warehouse floor. By integrating every step of the process domestically, these builders insulate themselves from the component shortages and supply chain shocks that frequently halt production at European and South Korean competitors. Selecting a shipyard requires matching a buyer's exact operational needs to a specific yard's technological capabilities. Price is only one variable in the equation. To understand these capabilities, we can look at the top 10 Chinese shipyards, ranked by their 12-month order volume, and map them as a vendor selection matrix. At number 10 is Hudong Zhonghua, a subsidiary of the state-owned conglomerate CSSC, the China State Shipbuilding Corporation. They are the pioneer for high-tech LNG, or liquefied natural gas, carriers. Building an LNG carrier here costs between $200 and $210 million. That offers a massive cost advantage over the $220 million premium charged by South Korean yards for the exact same gas containment technology. Number 9, New Hantong Ship Heavy Industry operates on the opposite model. They are a bulk volume engine, focusing on the highly reliable, standardized production of deck structures for bulk carriers to drive fast fleet renewal. At number 8 is Dalian Shipbuilding. Also part of the CSSC umbrella, they provide immense heavy lift capabilities and operate on a dual civilian-naval integration model, sharing infrastructure with military projects. These lower-volume, Tier 1 yards ask buyers to make a specific trade. You sacrifice rapid market agility to gain access to highly specialized, state-backed mega infrastructure. Higher up the volume ranks, yards are defining the agile modernization of global fleets. They are actively developing autonomous, AI-powered marine drones that slice rapidly through the water without any human crews. That innovation comes from number 7, Huangpu Wencheng. Their intense focus on specialized high-tech public service and military vessels limits their capacity for ultra-large commercial builds. Number 6, Zhoushan Chonghong International skips the niche tech to specialize in intermediate container assets, a highly lucrative segment of the cargo market. Contracting for container ships carries specific financial risk, tying the yard's capital flow directly to the volatile boom and bust cycles of global consumer freight rates. Number 5 is New Times Shipbuilding. As one of China's largest private shipbuilders, they offer agile contracts specifically for advanced dual-fuel eco-tankers. This middle tier represents a sweet spot for operators. You get rapid integration of next-generation propulsion technology without navigating the full bureaucracy of a state-owned enterprise. Rank 4, Fuji and Maui Shipbuilding, is a standardized workhorse. They trade bespoke, highly customized engineering for predictable delivery timelines on Panamax bulkers and feeder container ships. Number 3, Wuhu Shipyard, dominates a specific industrial niche. They manage a huge volume of orders to modernize chemical tanker fleets and build specialized bulk carriers. At number 2, Qingdao Beihai Shipbuilding commands absolute dominance in producing Newcastle-Max bulkers, the largest cargo vessels physically capable of entering the port of Newcastle, Australia. Notice the prominent Costco branding on the hull.
That branding highlights a critical dynamic. Contracting with Qingdao Beihai means your order competes for priority against the massive demands of China's own state-owned raw material supply chains. Working with ranks 2 through 4 is a pure volume play. These facilities are designed for operators who need reliable, standardized fleet replacement at a massive scale. The number 1 shipyard by order volume is Hengli Heavy Industries. In 2022, a private conglomerate took over a bankrupt, abandoned facility and rapidly scaled it to the top of the market. Their manufacturing scale is immense. They recently completed a global first by simultaneously constructing and floating out 4 massive VLCCs from a single dry dock. Hengli is currently executing a $1.9 billion capacity expansion, adding 4.6 million deadweight tons of throughput, specifically to capture the critical 2028 to 2030 delivery window. This creates a distinct trade-off for the buyer. You gain access to unmatched scale and production speed, but utilizing a hyper-growth private yard requires you to implement stringent, independent quality control on the ground. Hengli's position at number 1 proves that private market agility, when backed by billions in capital, can successfully outscale entrenched state-owned megayards in raw output. Looking at the top 10 list reveals the overarching strategic choice for modern shipping executives. You must decide between the state-owned CSSC conglomerates and the agile private yards. We map this trade-off on a quadrant scale: volume to high-tech on the x-axis, private to state-owned on the y-axis. CSSC yards cluster in the state-owned high-tech quadrant, ensuring delivery of complex vessels. Private yards cluster in the volume-focused quadrant, prioritizing rapid scaling. For fleet executives and investors, the primary operational risk is no longer poor physical build quality. The real risk is misaligning your specific fleet requirements with the wrong vendor profile. The final test is the looming 2030 global decarbonization mandates. Operators must transition to green-fueled logistics, like this LNG-powered vehicle carrier. Because global order books are backed up for years, these 10 specific yards effectively dictate the timeline for when global fleets will reach green compliance. China's complete industrial system means they possess the sovereign engineering and domestic steel, along with proprietary dual-fuel engine technology required to transition global fleets independently. The output of these 10 corporations directly controls the timeline and the cost of international maritime trade. Global capital must face a stark reality. Whether you view them as a supply chain necessity or a geopolitical risk, you must align your investments with a Chinese yard that matches your exact strategic appetite.
For decades, the global energy grid relied on a slow, predictable mix of fossil fuels. Solar power was a boutique alternative, mostly confined to residential rooftops and small-scale pilot projects. China changed that math by treating solar manufacturing as a matter of national security. Driven by the 14th and 15th five-year plans, they rapidly scaled up production lines, turning vast stretches of empty desert into multi-gigawatt power plants. Achieving this volume of technology requires absolute precision. Inside hyper-automated cleanrooms, massive cylindrical silicon ingots are sliced into perfect paper-thin wafers. The scale of this operation has driven the cost of solar hardware to the floor, making it the cheapest source of electricity on the planet. This chart shows the resulting explosion in global demand. By 2025, worldwide solar module shipments hit 536 gigawatts, the highest recorded volume for the industry. A single gigawatt provides roughly the same power capacity as a large commercial nuclear reactor. Producing over 500 of them in a year requires a manufacturing apparatus operating at a relentless pace. But this chart reveals a financial paradox. As the shipment bars go up, corporate profit margins crash, plunging below the cost of production. Manufacturers engaged in a bitter price war to secure contracts, driving wholesale prices down to mere pennies per watt, wiping out billions of dollars in revenue across the sector. To stop the bleeding, the Chinese government intervened with anti-involution policies. These regulations are designed to curb below-cost pricing and forcibly restrict energy access for outdated, inefficient factories. The state is engineering a market consolidation to flush out the weakest producers. In the current market, pure manufacturing volume is no longer a defense mechanism. To stay alive through 2025, the remaining giants must deploy highly specialized technological advantages to justify their place on the grid. Starting at number 10 is Risen Energy. They have survived the price wars by abandoning standard panels to push heterojunction technology, or HJT.
HJT is a hybrid cell design that captures sunlight on both sides of the panel to maximize energy yield. By refining this architecture, Risen pushed their commercial modules to a 740-watt power output. Number 9 is GCL system integration. Their survival strategy focuses on carbon reduction. They manufacture panels using granular silicon, a refined raw material that requires significantly less electricity to produce than traditional silicon chunks. This allows GCL to capture the market for ultra-low carbon footprint panels. At number 8, DAS Solar operates as a younger upstart. They bypassed legacy supply chains by building their business around N-type solar cells. N-type cells are doped with phosphorus, which prevents the panel from losing power over its lifespan and guarantees long-term efficiency for buyers. Number 7 is Astronergy, a subsidiary of the massive Chint Group. While independent manufacturers burn through cash reserves, Astronergy relies on deep state-owned financial backing. That institutional stability makes them the default supplier for massive utility megaprojects that require guaranteed long-term warranties. Number 6, Tongwei, approaches the market through raw force. They originally built a monopoly on the world's upstream polysilicon, the highly purified base material used to create all standard solar cells. Armed with the lowest material costs on Earth, Tongwei pushed downstream, assembling its own finished modules and undercutting the rest of the market.
Canadian Solar holds the number 5 spot. They insulate themselves from domestic price wars through a massive international sales network and a pivot into energy storage systems, or ESS. ESS are industrial battery banks that hold solar power for use after the sun goes down, offering a profitable second revenue stream. Ranks 10 through 5 prove that the middle of the pack is a war zone. These companies are surviving by locking down specific niches, whether that means raw material control, grid storage, or specialized cell architectures. Breaking into the top 4 requires a different level of influence. J Solar sits at number 4 by maintaining high factory utilization rates and the rapid industrialization of TOPCon 3.0 technology. TOPCon stands for Tunnel Oxide Passivated Contact, an architecture that adds an ultra-thin oxide layer to trap escaping electrons and boost power output. Trina Solar, at number 3, plays the role of industry standardizer. They forced the global market to adopt the massive 210mm wafer ecosystem. These oversized silicon squares generate more total power per panel than older, smaller formats, forcing competitors to either retool their factories or lose market share. At number 2, LONGi Green Energy operates as the tech maverick. While the rest of the industry spent billions retooling factories for TOPCon panels, LONGi took a financial risk. They shifted their production weight toward a completely different architecture known as back contact. This 3D diagram shows why LONGi made the switch. On a standard solar cell, silver electrical grid lines sit directly on top of the silicon, blocking a percentage of incoming sunlight. Back contact technology moves all of that electrical wiring to the bottom layer. It is more difficult to manufacture, but it leaves an unobstructed surface to absorb maximum light. Finally, at number 1 sits Jinko Solar. They hold the crown through sheer scale. By committing early to N-type TOPCon manufacturing, they flooded the global market with efficient panels at a volume no other company could match. These top 4 companies dictate the baseline technological standards for the sector. Their internal R&D cycles set the efficiency targets and pricing structures that every other solar project on Earth must follow. This pie chart captures the concentration of power resulting from the 2025 price wars. Just 4 companies now control 58% of the 536 gigawatt global solar module market. By operating at this scale, these giants are exporting clean energy deflation. They are packaging cheap, efficient electricity into shipping containers and sending it to emerging markets across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, driving down the global cost of decarbonization. This map illustrates the geopolitical response to Western trade barriers. The US and Europe have erected tariffs to block cheap imports. In response, these firms are building localized, multi-gigawatt factories directly inside the United States and establishing new manufacturing hubs in the Middle East. This geographic expansion shifts the industry away from a simple model of building in China and exporting outward. It replaces linear trade routes with a complex, worldwide web of localized production facilities optimized by centralized engineering teams. The period of hundreds of fragmented solar grants has ended. The price wars cleared the board. Moving forward, the physical infrastructure of the global energy transition relies on the survival and relentless efficiency of a handful of undisputed Chinese giants.
Global observers often misunderstand the Chinese internet because they view it through the lens of standalone social media apps. The fragmented Western user journey requires jumping between applications for discovery, reading reviews, making a purchase, and finally processing a payment. Every platform switch in this model creates friction. These gaps lead to severe user drop-off and lost conversions as consumers lose momentum between apps. The Chinese digital landscape is built on full-funnel digital infrastructures. Here, content, community, and city services are merged into a single environment. Western marketing often focuses on top-of-funnel vanity metrics like impressions. In China, the baseline expectation is a zero-friction, single-session purchasing funnel. This all-encompassing digital architecture is described by the term super app. Applying a fragmented Western strategy to this closed-loop system results in wasted ad spend. It fails to capture a highly sophisticated, mobile-first consumer base that expects total integration. We can navigate this ecosystem using a 10-point framework, categorizing each monolith by its superpower. We begin with Baidu, the search and AI pioneer. Baidu has evolved into a network of AI agents that execute user requests autonomously. While Baidu offers high first-pass query success, it lacks the deep, direct social commerce integration found in its primary rivals. Moving across the map, we reach Weibo, known as the public square. Brands utilize Weibo to trigger massive, rapid nationwide awareness and viral celebrity campaigns. As an open public forum, Weibo faces a structural limitation. It lacks the private retention mechanics used by closed-loop systems to keep customers loyal. The next node is Bilibili, the hub for Gen Z culture. Bilibili captures intense youth loyalty through long-form video and its signature bullet chatting, where user comments overlay the video in real time. These platforms drive cultural resonance and mass awareness. However, operating at the top of the funnel requires routing users elsewhere to finalize a transaction. We now transition to the platforms that dictate consumer desire, taste, and aggressive pricing. Kuaishou provides unrivaled penetration into China's massive lower-tier cities and rural markets through grassroots live commerce. Kuaishou's raw, highly practical aesthetic makes the platform incompatible with luxury or premium brand positioning. Xiaohongshu, or Red, serves as the discovery engine. It is built entirely on peer-to-peer trust. 70 PDD utilizes gamified team purchase mechanics to capture explosive growth among hyper-rational, budget-conscious consumers. While these engines generate consumer desire, brands face a choice: submit to steep, margin-crushing discounts, or rely on external transactional rails to close the deal. The top 4 platforms serve as the physical, logistical, and financial backbone of the country. Meituan dominates local services, controlling a grid of 500 million active users who demand physical fulfillment within 30 minutes. This chart shows Alibaba's organizational scale, acting as the high-trust transactional backbone for the digital economy through Tmall, Taobao, and Alipay. Looking at the retail and cloud columns on the left, maintaining a flagship presence requires significant operational investment. Douyin, owned by ByteDance, is the algorithmic retail powerhouse. It compresses the traditional marketing funnel into seconds by merging high-volume entertainment with instant one-click buying. The trade-off is a brutal content cycle. Douyin's algorithm requires brands to fund relentless, high-cost production just to maintain basic visibility. The number 1 platform is Tencent's WeChat, the operating system for 1.38 billion users. Brands use mini-programs to build deep private traffic portals inside WeChat for communication, work, and payment retention. These 4 monoliths provide the physical logistics, financial rails, and algorithmic gatekeepers of the Chinese economy. The strategic reality is that the era of picking a single platform to conquer China is over. Mapping the key platforms onto this quadrant reveals how they interlock to form an inescapable digital system. Success now requires systems design, routing trust from Xiaohongshu, triggering viral conversion on Douyin, executing fulfillment via Meituan, and locking in loyalty within WeChat.
An evolutionary leap is already rendering our traditional platform interfaces completely obsolete, paving the way for the rise of autonomous agentic apps. In this model, agentic AI autonomously executes complex daily tasks across the entire digital ecosystem. This online merge-offline infrastructure is writing the blueprint for the global digital economy years before it reaches the West. To survive this reconfiguration, global brands must stop treating these platforms as mere marketing channels and start integrating with them as autonomous digital utilities.